Welcome to Doctor on Call with your host, DocGriffon. The doctor will be with you momentarily. Our guest this evening is artist and YouTube content commentator, Antihero. Be aware, there are several emergency exits on this talk show. Take a few moments to locate your nearest exit. In the unlikely event of a water landing, please be aware this interview may be used as a flotation device. Doc Griffin, paging Doc Griffin. You're needed in the OR. Stat.
And thank you very much, Nurse Cadunt. Oh, welcome everyone. This is kind of a roller coaster. CK Walker we had scheduled for this evening, but she got stuck in the writer's room. That's how Hollywood goes. We'll get her booked back in. She feels really bad, so hopefully third time's a charm when we get her booked in June. But that does not mean that we have a decline in entertainment and interesting people who do interesting things. With that, I would like to, first of all, thank Antihero for dropping in and welcome him to Doctor on Call.
Thanks a lot, Doc. How's it going?
I have very few complaints. Most of them can only be voiced with interpretive dance.
Thank God I have an audio only for the hangout.
I'm completely okay with that as well. Because of course,
interpretive.
Yeah, it's always pants optional.
Interpretive dance is also one of those mediums that just should not be shared with people.
Yeah, I think so. It's a personal thing.
Yeah. It should stay that way forever, to the grave, in fact.
So now, I do want to make sure we haven't had any prep, but we have had many conversations, not only online, but behind the scenes. And I'm always curious to where it started, not where the conception happened, but where you were born and raised.
Oh well, I was actually a military kid. So my father was started off enlisted and then ended up going over to officer side, and I think we moved roughly every 2 years, give or take. Strangely enough, we were one of those weird Army families that often went back to the same state. So I've been to Maryland twice, North Carolina twice, but I've been on both sides of the ocean as far as living goes. I don't really have any place I call a hometown. If you're like, oh, well, where were you born? Then I'd have to say Baltimore, Maryland. But I mean, I take most of my, I guess, hometown culture, if you will, from Nebraska. That's where I spent most of the good portion of my formative teenage years, I suppose.
Now, you were talking about moving every 2 years. I would think it would kind of slow down after a while.
No, my dad stayed pretty frequently with the moving. He was in the Army for, I think he did 25 years plus. He didn't retire until after I'd already joined up.
Now, I will say, just to skip ahead a little bit, was your dad the influence for going into service, or was it a different thought?
Honestly, I mean, I understood the military already because I'd grown up in an Army family. But the big reason was because I had a high school sweetheart who I was looking at trying to get married to. And I mean, to be perfectly honest, I'd fucked off my last 2 years of high school. I did not get along well with my mother. And I acted out in a number of ways. And one of them was, fuck high school. I don't need this shit. I don't need homework. I don't need any of that. I can pass these tests. And I ended up with like a CDB average through my last 2 years. I wasn't going to college or anything like that. And Nebraska is not exactly a place where you can get a shit ton of jobs. So I said, well, hey, I already know a lot about the Army. I'm mostly physically fit. The basic will get me into shape. It'll also give me a roof over my head. It'll give me insurance for my girl. I can get married, all that kind of stuff. And so I joined up.
Okay, so now one of the curious things, because I heard that this has changed in future generations, but when we were in second grade, one of the first things that our teacher would ask us is to tell her what she wanted, what we wanted to be when we grew up. As an elementary school kid, most guys pick, like firefighter or policeman. Did you have any inkling of what you wanted to do? What fascinated you as a kid at that
Oh,
age?
when I was that age, I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and it didn't change till probably the 5th or 6th grade. I wouldn't say obsessed, but I could tell you facts about dinosaurs all day long when I was a kid. I wanted to be a paleontologist. I would buy the little sand kits where you could, hack out the little, fake dinosaur bone on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
I had all those. I had rock hammers, and I was big on geology and archaeology, and I wanted to be a paleontologist. And then around 6th grade or so, reality kicked in, and I realized or discovered that paleontologists make no money. Their personal lives are trash. They spend a lot of time away from their families, spend a lot of time out on the road, and most of the time, their discoveries get given to bigger names.
Uh,
And that
yeah,
was really kind of a damper for me,
yeah, I would say there's a lot of grunt work to be done with it. I mean, you do get the travel out of it, but I mean, if you're looking for recognition of what you do, yeah, I would think
Uh,
you'd end up on the short end of the stick.
the travel was also a big problem for me. So growing up in that military family, and I'll be honest, I do not make friends well, and growing up the way I did was a big part of it. After you've moved 2 or 3 times and you realize, as a kid that you're never going to make lasting friends, or at least you don't feel like it, you really just stop trying. So by the time I got to 7th grade, 8th grade, 6th grade in that area, I was tired of moving all the damn time. I was tired of traveling. I was tired of living out of suitcases and backpacks. Tired of having boxes that never got unpacked. Because if you move a lot, that's how it ends up. Uh,
Yeah, I've got a front room in the ghetto mansion that I live in that legitimately there are still boxes filled in that front room, and we've been here for years, and they still my flatmates
oh
have
yeah,
not unpacked. So I
oh
get
yeah.
completely.
I have a storage unit right now it's a 5 by 5 by 10, and it's from top to bottom, side to side, full of boxes that until I get my own actual place, because I live in a boarding house type situation right now. Until I get into my own actual place, I'm never gonna unpack those. But I'm used to it at this point, but because of the way I grew up and everything, I was like, I'm so fucking sick of traveling. So that kind of well, it's always going to be some sort of like long lost dream of mine. It's not realistic,
Now did
unfortunately.
now did the excessive moving around did that stunt your social skills, or did it kind of crank the knob up to where it's like, I got a brief amount of time, I got to make my impact, I got to make my friends? Or was it just, what, I'm not going to be here in 2 years, so screw it?
Yes and no. So I'm really bad at certain parts of social interaction. Those of you who have spoken to me probably know that. Um, there are certain things I just don't grasp very well, like empathy or compassion. Um, but I am very good at blending into whatever particular crowd I'm around. I'm fairly decent at being the center of attention and carrying a conversation. I read the room mostly well. I just don't really let a lot of people get close to me. It's really the big one. Just because, again, in my experience, I'm going to leave in 2 years. So, uh, in fact, some of these people I've met on the internet have been some of the longest continuous relationships I've had, which is wow, that's sad. Holy shit. Smart Pig is completely right. This is a sob story already. Change the subject. No.
uh, uh, so would you say it was more of a benefit or a detriment?
Both. Very much both. So I've actually told this to a couple of my friends out here because I live in Massachusetts now, and Massachusetts is about as towny as you can get. The vast majority of people I meet out here were born out here, and they've never really left. Um, so a lot of them have these friends they've known since elementary school. They have these networks built up over the last 20 to 30 years that I don't even understand how to begin building a network like that. And it's really cool to me. And I get to look at them and be like, wow, you have this ability and this network capability now. People you've known, it boggles my mind. But then on the same token, if they lose their friends, they're just shattered. They're shocked. They can't function without that network and that support group to help them. They can't do a damn thing. Whereas me, I'm like, okay, yeah, it sucks to lose friends and it really hurts, but I've got me, and I'm always capable of handling things on my own. I think there's a level of self sufficiency you get when you grow up as a military kid moving that townies just don't get. I mean, that may sound horribly biased, but
Well,
I guess it's a trade off.
I would think you'd move to a term of rugged individualism, knowing that you really whatever seeds you plant, you're not going to be able to see the fruition of it. So yeah, I can see where that can turn in, where you become more self-reliant.
Yeah, and that's what I've often, like I said, I tell them that some of the people I've made friends with out here in Mass, it's a trade off. I have a certain, I guess self-reliance is probably a good way to put it, but they have the networking that I don't have. They have the friend network and the support groups. It's been an interesting dynamic.
So you were saying that basically you ran the average grades. You're like, well, my dad did the military. Why don't I do a turn?
Yeah, because I knew precisely that what it was going to give me, it was going to be able to help me get set up to have a wife. That was my big concern at that point.
Now that's funny that you mentioned that, because a lot of people, when they get to the graduation point, they're not thinking about nuclear family.
Well, ever since I was about 17 or so, like I said, I was just tired of fucking moving. I wanted to settle down. I knew the Army was going to make me move, but I only put in for a 4-year term. I wasn't planning on re-enlisting. I was planning on taking the GI Bill, going to school and all that. That did not pan out quite the way I hoped it would. But yeah, no, I had my thought process involved.
And
like I said, just tired of all the moving and wanted to settle down and start up my own family.
and so, in your mind, were you thinking, what, a family sufficient anchor?
Say again? I'm sorry, I clipped out there.
Oh no. Basically, were you looking at a family and going, well, this would be a sufficient anchor to start an adult life?
Yeah, probably. I don't know if I would have looked at it in those precise terms at age 17. I'll make this very clear. I'm a moron now. I was much worse then. So I don't think I would have thought of it quite that way. But no, that's probably true.
I forget who said it, but there was a famous quote: "Wisdom is only achieved through time and pain." Now,
Yep, no, that's very, very factual.
now, would you say that when you went into the service, did that was that a boon or a benefit?
That was well, looking at it in hindsight, it was definitely a benefit in pretty much every way. During my time in, I would have thought it was an awful thing. During that time, me and the woman I was planning on marrying ended up not being in a situation where we were getting married. Which I'll admit, that messed me up just a smidge. I was basically a kid straight out of high school, thinking I was an adult and trying to take on adult responsibilities, and just it did not work that way. But Army taught me a lot. The Army taught me built on a lot of lessons that my father had already started teaching me. It amplified that self-reliance, taught me how to work in a unit, taught me a lot of things that, unfortunately, not as many of them translate over to civilian life as I would have liked. But it did. I think without the military, I'd be a very different person, and I don't think I would like who I was if I hadn't gone through that.
Okay, so when you get out of the military, what skill did they teach you that you were able to use most when you integrated back in? I hate to say into society, but job force maybe.
Honestly, none. I was in the Army as an intel analyst, which does have translations over. But to be perfectly honest, I came back from Iraq a little messed up, and the Army, rather than saying, "Oh, we're gonna get you treatment, we're gonna take care of you," they instead said, "Ah, well, you've got some patterns of misconduct there, so we're gonna let you go with this general discharge, and you just have fun." And that was pretty much how it went. So I ended up spending a lot of my time thoroughly wasted before I ended up going back to Nebraska from Texas.
So did you put the kibosh on going with the GI Bill?
They told me I didn't get the GI Bill.
Oh,
It was the one thing they were taking from me. I got all the health insurance bits. I got everything else. They said, we're not going to give you the GI Bill, which was a little unpleasant. I mean, perfectly honest.
that would definitively suck. I mean, because I know there are a lot of people who don't have advancement opportunities, and they're like, well, I'll do a 4-year turn, and then I'll have that GI Bill to actually go to school and do something that I want to do. It always reminds me of the whole Starship Troopers thing. Service gives you citizenship.
Would you like to know more? That's an excellent film.
Amazing, and people who just scoff at it and just say, this is a propaganda film. I only have 2 things to say to them, which is, duh, and if you didn't laugh, you pretty much have no sense of humor.
I think it was the director or the producer, one or the other, who said in an interview, they said, is this based on any sort of propaganda film stylings or anything? And his answer was wink, wink, Riefenstahl.
Mm-hmm.
Which I thought was funny as fuck, because if you watch a lot of it, it is very similar to some of the Nazi propaganda shit. Of course, that was largely because the team involved with Starship Troopers, the movie, hadn't really read the book and didn't care to.
Could you blame them?
I actually liked the book, but I also kind of like Heinlein stuff. So,
okay. Heinlein for me has always been hit or miss.
You're totally right about that. His books are sometimes great and sometimes thoroughly confusing. But when they weren't thoroughly confusing, I enjoyed the crap out of them. So,
well, that's true. I don't know if anybody who knows who Leni Riefenstahl is. But let's say she is a filmmaker.
That's a simple way to put it. A very prolific filmmaker with some very nationalistic goals.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. Even when you watch some of her work, it is complete and total propaganda. But that's what Paul Verhoeven said.
It's stirring, though.
Yeah, he loved it.
She did Triumph of the Will, right? Wasn't that her?
Yes.
Yeah.
She did. She did a shit ton of them, but they're beautifully shot, and they're almost chilling to watch. Just because of the fantastical nature of how much parade and pomp and circumstance that the Third Reich had. That's not an endorsement of the Third Reich, but it is an endorsement of a great filmmaker. And guess what?
Well,
she was
like
a chick. Why don't SJWs ever bring up Leni Riefenstahl?
Because they're anti-fascist and anti-Nazi, of course.
But she was one of the first female filmmakers.
And she was, and again, she was amazing. It's like Hugo Boss, though. Hugo Boss created the snazziest military uniforms in the world. They were the Nazi SS uniforms, but
I can't dispute that either. They were styling and profiling.
It takes a lot to be covered in the ash of 6 million Jews and still look good.
Well, yeah, I can understand that. I don't like ashes myself.
I'm just saying, Hugo Boss knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
That's they definitely had it down. It's some snazzy, snappy fucking uniforms.
Yeah,
but back to the topic there.
Yeah, we were off.
Before I start telling Jew jokes and get the whole stream banned.
Yeah, no, so you're out.
Mm-hmm.
You did your time, you paid your debt, you find out you're not getting the financial backing that was promised as you went in. What's the thoughts that are going through your head at this point? What direction are you looking for?
At that point in time, I spent, like I said, a lot of time just being drunk. Um, I ended up wandering back to Nebraska. And I was not in Nebraska too long before Uncle Sam decided that they wanted to talk to me again, but on a different time, different kind of talk.
Oh,
That talk cost me 5 years.
uh,
Uh,
is
and
that
then I got
something that
out.
you want to get into?
Not particularly. It's been hashed over a lot of times. Suffice it to say, I did time in a federal prison, and now I'm not.
Yeah, because I knew nothing of it. So,
Yeah, no, I did a couple years there. A place called Allenwood out in Pennsylvania. It's it's a nice place. It's full of very happy, friendly people and razor wire.
did you get any visits from Pinoid?
Once or twice he was there for conjugals.
No, okay.
He had a boyfriend there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to split up a potentially happy family when parole
No,
comes.
you really don't. You don't wanna do anything like that. You want to keep him safe, keep him together. Pinoy's a good guy. He really loves his man.
Yeah, well, you've got to appreciate an attentive silverback.
This is true. This is true.
Um,
I think he was the bottom though.
oh,
Yeah.
uh, I don't know. I should have discussed that when I interviewed him. Damn it,
Yep,
I
you
missed.
should have. You should have brought that up. You should have been like, "Hey, I have rumor is that you were the bottom to a prisoner, to a convict. What's the deal on that?" He would have been like, "Well, now I'm saying, I mean, you gotta do what you gotta do. It's not gay when you're in jail.
Well,
He'll back that up."
it's missed opportunities, but now, so okay, you get out from the gray bar.
hmm
Um, I mean, your state of mind at this point. Are you thinking at this point what's going to fuck me over next, or what or what am I going to do to get my life squared? Because I know when you get out of incarceration, it's usually fuck this. I'm never going back. I've got a plan. I'm going this way, or it's fuck this. I don't care anymore. I've already had the worst. Life can't do any worse to me.
Honestly, it would have been a bizarre combination of both. Um, so while I was in my first couple of years, I was a very angry little man. Had a lot of fights, had a lot of run-ins with people that I really shouldn't have run-ins with. But I got real lucky. I'll be perfectly honest. It all came down to luck. I had a guy who came up to me and said, "Hey, I don't want to see you get killed. I'm here, and that's what's going to happen to you if you're not careful. Let me help you." And I told him I was friends with him and all, but I told him basically to fuck off. I hadn't beaten yet. Nobody was going to beat me as far as I was concerned. And, I was going to die trying to prove that basically. And he asked me, "So what do you learn by? What can I do to help you learn these things? Because I don't want to see you get anything happen to you." And I said, "The only thing I learned from is pain." So he whooped my ass. It was the first ass beating I ever got while I was in. He beat the brakes off me and then revealed that before he got in trouble for drugs, he'd done 16 years in the Marines. Um, that was information I would have liked to have known before the ass whooping.
Wow.
But and then he started teaching me everything you know. And then about a year before I got out, he and my best friend while I was in both came to me separately and said, "Man, you're about to leave. You got a year or so left. You got to stop being this violent guy you are now. You have to slow down. You have to change things up." And I started really working on it. So when I got out, I was still really angry at the world. Um, I had seen a lot of shit while I was in that I just really didn't fucking appreciate. Um, I had a very skewed way of looking at things from a very black and white, very violent perspective. And I knew I was going back to live with my family, who I still didn't get along with. My mother, I already knew was going to make things worse. And so, on the same token, though, I was like, "Hey, this is behind me now. I can move forward with my life. I can do all these things. I can start shit over again." So it was a really bizarre place I came out of. I was good enough to stay off the drink. I've been drunk twice since I got out, and both of those weren't like drunks. They were, I'm warm and fuzzy and tipsy, and now I'm gonna go to bed. Because after 5 years of not drinking at all, I was basically a fucking lightweight as all hell.
Well,
So,
how hard was it to press the reset button?
uh, there are still days I'm fucked all to hell. According to the VA doctors, because I go to the VA now. I finally got hooked up with them. According to them, I've got some brain damage. that because of the way the brain, if you don't know, the brain will rewire itself around damaged spots.
Well,
And because of that, I don't hit reset buttons well. I don't learn new patterns very well. So a lot of things have been real fucking difficult to do. I still have trouble not immediately getting angry when somebody comes at me. I still have a lot of trouble not reacting like a moron when I'm cornered. Hitting the reset button has been hard in a lot of ways. I've gotten very lucky with the VA and my therapist who have they've really helped me out in a lot of things that I just did not even think there was going to be any help for.
so are you saying that the last fight that you had, you were on the inside?
No, I've had a fight or two since I've been out.
Well,
I've
you're young.
had a few lapses here and there. So
Well, you're young. Get it out of your system.
exactly, I haven't turned 30 quite yet.
So now you're out. Basically, you serve time in two very unique and different ways.
I did.
So you're looking around. What do you see as your major opportunity? Being back on the firmly planted on the ground of new civilization.
Well, right now I'm doing two things. Well, technically three. One of them is kind of passive though. I'm waiting on reports back from the VA I'm trying to get my GI Bill back. The other one though is that I'm currently in vocational rehabilitation. Because I guess I'm just not good with other people at the moment. But that I also would really like to be an author. It's something I've been thinking about since I was a kid. I've got lots of stories in my head. I'm a fairly decent writer, if I'm being honest with myself. The big part's just sitting down and finding the motivation to actually write something out and finish it. So that's kind of one of the things I'm working on now is trying to get those things done.
Well, the best advice that I was ever given, and I'm not going to say the guy's name because nobody's going to know who the fuck he is, but he's a writer who's written many, 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 many books. And the only piece of advice that he ever gave was writer's right. If you do it every day, you can get better at it. Or you can learn that you're not so good at it. By the way, well, I'll tell you because you probably know Garrison Keillor. Because Garrison Keillor is like from around my neck of the woods. So anytime he had a book out, which was like every 27 minutes, he would be there signing. And matter of fact, I'd been thinking about trying to get him on, but if I remember correctly, I'll be honest with you, I thought he died.
People do that sometimes. Yeah. It's really inconvenient for the rest of us.
Yeah, if not, he's got some age to him. Yeah, he's got to be in his mid 70s, maybe late 70s. But I think the only one that he's really known best for is Prairie Home Companion.
Mm-hmm.
And he does the Writer's Almanac thing too, but
I try to write about 1,000 words a day if I can. Sometimes absolute crap, sometimes really good. I don't have anything I have a lot of ideas, but nothing concrete put down to a story yet. There were a few stories I really wanted to tell, but they weren't coming out the way I'd really hoped. They were a little weaker than I thought, so I'm trying to find the perfect tale to start off with.
Well, I know. My personal mentor was Ray Bradbury, and he did the Mark Twain method, which was Mark Twain would write a book until he got bored of it, because Mark Twain and Ray Bradbury never believed in writer's block. He's like, they're like, it doesn't happen. You get bored with the material. You can still write, but you get bored with it and you don't really want to do it anymore. So they would have 4 or 5 stories going at any given time. Now, Bradbury overdosed on it. He had like a dozen stories going. So that's why he was so prolific. He never burnt out, because when story 1 started boring him, he went to story 2. And if that started boring him, he followed down the line.
It's something I've considered. The only reason I haven't done that more is just because I feel like if I do that, then I'll just never fucking finish any of them.
Well, but
And, that would be bad, you know?
well, it's a difficulty to wrap your head around. But even Bradbury himself said, I teach myself to write every day, and it doesn't make a difference how much I write. But it does make the difference that I write, and I found that made an incredible impact on me writing, because I'll have 5 or 6 different stories going on at any given time. And the cool thing is I'll go back, like there's one story that I wrote. I put it away for 2 years, and I came back to it, and I read it. It was only like 4 pages long. I read it and I was like, okay, I know where to go from here. And it was something that was completely different from when I started it. So basically, you're getting a fresh take on your own work.
It's actually, that's like one of my favorite things about creating characters and writing, is that they constantly evolve, and the more life you put in them, the more likely that story is to change. And it's one of my favorite parts of any book is to see character development, is to see characters change from one stage to the next, to the next, to the next. So, for instance, one of my favorite books of all time is it's a series, 4 books. It's the Empire of Man, by John Ringo and David Weber, who are both, if you know sci-fi at all, John Ringo and David Weber are just they're spot on for sci-fi work. John Ringo does have the no John Ringo no meme attached to him, but ignore that.
Yeah, I've got talks going on with his publicist.
Nice. John Ringo's the man. I will happily watch that. But they together they co-wrote the book, the series, The Empire of Man. It's the march up country, march the sea, march the stars, and then one last one, and the name always escapes me because it breaks tradition. It's not March, it's something else. But basically it follows this kid named Roger. He's a prince of this star empire kind of deal. And when the book opens, he is this just painfully, cringily spoiled brat. He's a dandy. He's a fop. He's absolutely useless to everyone. Through a series of events, they end up crashed on basically a hell world. The whole thing is a jungle hell. It's like Vietnam, but worse.
Okay.
And it's just him and his the battalion of guys who are supposed to bodyguard him. And he, as the 4 books progress, he goes from being this utterly useless waste of space, who's just a prissy pussy 24/7. And by the end of it, there's maybe a dozen of the original soldiers left, and they're like as loyal to him as they could be loyal to anyone. They die for him in a heartbeat because he's gone through that much transformation. And because it goes over 4 books, you can watch as he goes from spoiled brat to basically stupid lieutenant to, experienced captain or major. And then all of a sudden now he's capable of leading regiments and controlling worlds because of all the little lessons he's learned and picked up over their, year-long trek across this hell planet. I like seeing the progression there.
So I'm guessing it's sci-fi then.
Oh, it is. It's military sci-fi. I'm a big fan of military sci-fi books. So John Ringo, David Weber, the whole Bolos series. I don't know if you're familiar with that. What that is, basically giant AI tanks.
So is that the vein that you want to write in?
Actually, no, not as much, because it requires a bunch of research, and I'm just not as smart on scientific stuff as I probably should be. Because if I were going to write sci-fi, I want to be something closer to what John Ringo or especially David Weber had produced. David Weber is probably the one guy who makes space naval battles exciting to read. Usually naval battles in space or really anywhere, I just cannot stand. I have no interest in whatsoever. But David Weber makes them actually interesting, and he follows a lot of as close to real world science as you can get. Obviously, with faster than light travel and whatnot, they have to make some shit up, but does a really good job with that.
And I do want to say real quick, since we're in time, we're technically at the bottom of the hour. If you don't know Antihero, or you'd like to get to know Zach a little better, check him out in the descriptor. I shit the bed on the descriptor, but we do have the links for YouTube, Twitter, and he appears frequently on Help for the Guildless. So feel free to check that out. You know what? I'll even add a little more because description to follow kind of sucks.
I also appear a lot here on Doc's channel as well as over on Moonifest Destiny.
Yeah, well, we found Antihero to be a regular contributor to IRS.
Whole insomnia thing, it really makes the IRS a lot easier.
Yeah. Now, let me ask this because I get a varying amount of answers to it. Do you know what causes your insomnia?
According to the VA doctors, it's probably the brain damage.
Okay.
They're not entirely sure, and I haven't gone through any sleep testing stuff yet. I'll probably do some sleep studies in the next year or so. Because I've got a lot of other tests they want to run at some point. But they say for the most part, it's probably a combination of PTSD and brain damage.
Yeah. I got my brain damage after I got my insomnia. So I always try to find a relative link between the two.
Yeah, I'm not. I can't talk English today. It's great. No, the brain damage thing is a really weird one. It definitely kind of screws things up left and right. They're not entirely sure. I mean, it's the brain, so there's a lot of science that goes into it, and people aren't exactly sure how it works all just yet.
Yeah. So, what do you do to get by? Because writing has always been considered to be a secondary occupation until you really hit it.
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing? What are you doing? And we'll get into the YouTubes in just a little bit. But
yep.
What are you doing in the IRL to occupy yourself?
Mostly I do IRL. I do. Good Lord, I can't fucking talk. I'm gonna try this again, and we're gonna get this out right this time.
Take two.
Mostly I do part-time jobs. So I've done a lot of cashier work. I've done a lot of heavy lifting, manual labor stuff.
Do you find any of it rewarding besides the paycheck?
I actually don't mind manual labor so much. I like jobs where I can see a quantitative result to what I'm doing. So if I have to go in, let's say I have to move large stacks of lumber to different areas, I'm okay with that. I know it's menial labor and it doesn't really result in much, but I can see definite progress. Good God.
Yeah, we had a question on the IRS. I think it was last night or night before. If you could pick you had to go into a blue collar field. What would you choose?
If I had to go into a blue collar field, like I take it career wise,
mm-hmm.
Probably the demolition side of construction.
Blowing shit up?
Not even blowing shit up so much, just breaking things. I mean, even if it's on the ground, demolitions work, or you have a sledgehammer and just busting down walls for renovations.
Yeah. I completely get that. That was one of my favorite jobs until being able to be physical got in the way. I used to love to do tear outs on those old homes. Plus, you can rarely ever go home mad when you just spent the whole day beating the shit out of an old house.
Oh, yeah, no, that's true.
Okay, so
all right, hey Doc, give me 1 second. I'm gonna grab that delivery I told you about.
Okay, go for it.
Yep, be right back.
And that's just in time too, because I added on to the descriptor. Down there's my stuff. If you want to get to know me and what I do, you got to buy me dinner first. But there's the links to my Twitter, the Streamlabs, the Patreon, also the TeePublic store. And we like to support Queensboro Custom Logo too, because they make some of the best embroidered stuff out there. It's cheap and it's easy. But even more important, underneath that, we've got our prescription for additional entertainment. These are creators on the YouTubes that I like, people that I watch regularly, people that I enjoy their content. They are as vast and diverse as any 12 people can be. but they put out a lot of good content and, more importantly, a lot of entertaining content. That's why I would suggest when you're done with this, if you don't have anything else to watch, well, I think Pickle's doing the that soundboarding show afterwards. But if you don't have anything else to watch or you're curious, even if you're tri-curious, then try one of these prescriptions. Because I guarantee that you'll like at least one of them or your money back. And since you didn't pay anything, then it's a win-win. I got to say that. But also, I guess I should mention that coming up next week, just as a preview, we are going to have the voice of Court TV on, Mr. Steve Taylor. He's a great voiceover artist. Now, I know I've interviewed voiceover artists previously, but they've always been in the animation field. Now, I'm going to be interviewing somebody who's in the IRL field. You know, basically, he's the voice of like KTLA. He does all the bumpers for all the major radio stations. He does bumpers nationally as well. But yeah, he is the official voice of Court TV. So that should be a fun interview because bourbon will be drank. I promise.
I'm back, Doc.
And welcome back. Now, let's talk a little bit about the YouTubes. Now,
there's not a whole lot to talk about on that front.
Well, but I'm guessing that initially it was it was a relationship of fan service that you were watching to be entertained. When did you start actually getting involved as far as saying, well, I want to do some content. I want to be a creator. I want my voice to be heard.
So yeah, you're definitely right. I did start off watching just to be entertained. I especially was a fan of the whole wrecked feminist type videos. I'm still a fan of those to this day. But I don't know. I think when I started watching, and y'all can make fun of me in the chat as much as you want. I think when I started watching a lot of Stargon's videos at first is when I really started going, man, I want to do this YouTube thing. I want to get my own opinion out there because I have different takes on stuff. And I was watching these people put out their opinion on things. So it was like, YouTube is this platform where I can put out my own opinion. That's really cool. And people like it or they dislike it as it goes, but it's the internet, so I don't really give a fuck what their opinions are. Because their opinion is just emerald text on a screen.
Now, do you remember your first broadcast that you were a part of?
The first one I was a part of?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that I got on one of Trippy's streams first. I think. I am terrible at remembering things, but I'm fairly certain the first time I got on a stream it was with Trippy, but don't quote me on that. It might have even been I might have even been on a Snatchcast once or twice. I know I was, just not sure at what point. Or it was the cunt stream back then, but I think it was Trippy stuff that I was first on. And then I ended up talking with Antoine, and specifically because I got involved in a stream where we were talking about role-playing games because I'm that kind of nerd. And he liked some of the ideas that I was talking about. And so Antoine approached me and asked if I'd be interested in doing a show. Now there is some slight controversy surrounding that show.
Well, and we can certainly get to that in just a moment, but I'm still more curious about the first time you got on. Did you think, well, yeah, this could be viable. This could be a creative outlet for me?
Yeah, no, definitely. As far as creative outlet goes, as an outlet in general, yes, that's something I've always tried to focus on. If I ever stop having fun doing this, I don't want to do it anymore. Any stream I get onto, even the ones where I know it's going to be a shit show, where I know I'm under fire, because there have been a few like that, I still have fun doing it in the long run. It's still an exciting experience to do. I mean, I'm never going to deny that even though I'm like, yeah, you know what, I just don't want to deal with your drama today, there's a part of me that definitely wants to deal with all the drama. And I think everyone's got that bone in them. No, definitely as a creative outlet. As far as a monetarily viable thing, I I've made money off of this. I'm not going to deny that. But I've never looked at it as anything like, oh, I'm going to go like Magog and give me this a full-time job, or I'm going to be getting ducats and ducats off this. I've never really thought that.
Well, I mean, pretty much when you hit 2017, Adpocalypse strikes. And then...
And if you have an opinion and toe the line, you don't get the money.
Yeah, and then you get into 2018 where they're demonetizing like mad bastards. So the people that I end up speaking with, either behind the scenes or over on streams, are normally here to do it for the creative outlet, for the ability to for their voices to be heard. Now, when you first came on, did you have a stance or position, or did you get? I should mention it. I should say it this way: did you get lumped into a category?
No, I think the closest I ever got to being lumped to a category is someone, despite my face being right there on the video, because I've never hated my face. Someone did try to say that I was African American. Other than that, and I don't think I've ever been lumped into a category. For a while, I was even on fairly decent terms with Christy Winters, who is a pretty heavy feminist. I've always been fairly open to the fact that I don't agree with, for instance, feminist ideology or social justice. But I've never been lumped in any category. In fact, it's been one of my biggest complaints that I'm on so very, very few block lists.
Well, you got to work on that.
I am proud to say that Steve Shives has blocked me.
Yeah, see, Steve Shives has not blocked me yet.
Yeah, I was kind of shocked about that he blocked little old me. Of course, I do follow people like Sargon and a couple others, and so he has block bots to take care of that for him.
Yeah, apparently I haven't been following the right people, so the block bots are not taking any notice.
Well, you should fix that. I mean, it's pretty depressing that you're not on that particular. That's a mark of prestige, all right? That shows that you're a real YouTuber.
Yeah, I mean, I've tweeted to him directly, and he didn't block me because I badmouth Star Trek, and I thought.
I mean, he probably didn't even see the tweet, to be frank. I mean, there's so many tweets that probably go his way every day. His position is not one I envy, and not even ideologically speaking. He's just so outright hated by so many people on both sides. It's just not a place I want to be. I don't want to share his shoes at all.
Well, his wife still loves him.
I mean, for various definitions of love as far as feminism goes, yeah.
Oh, it got to have somebody to kind of love, I guess. I don't even know. I got caught up looking to see where good old Steve is now, but I'll go away from that because that's.
He still makes content. He still produces content, at least I think twice a month, give or take. I occasionally watch it, and every time I'm repulsed by his face, but still.
But he keeps making some of the worst Star Trek commentary videos, like why Voyager was one of the best shows, and it just basically turns out that they had a female captain.
Mm-hmm. Well, he's been. Unfortunately, Shives is one of those guys who, all reports say that he started off fantastic, as a real skeptic, but he ended up being completely consumed by the demonic force that is feminism. It's basically taken away any real intelligence the man might have had and replaced it with social justice.
Now, is that something that's of concern to you? What type of stream do you like to be a part of? What's the social discourse that gets your juices flowing?
Well, as far as streaming goes, I mean, I honestly prefer streams that are just fun. That's why I jump on IRS, because the topic shifts, changes around, people have a good time, there's lots of laughter. But as far as I guess social commentary or political stuff, anything where you're debating the right and wrong of an action is usually something that's interesting to me. Pardon me. So, for instance, the big controversy right now is the milkshake thing. People throwing milkshakes on political figures. And
Wow.
there's been at least one person who I know of who's advocated, look, if they throw a milkshake at you, that's assault, and you should be able to kill them. And that's something I'd very much like to debate with the man, because I'm like, I don't think murdering people over milkshakes is really the right way to do that.
Yeah, they should
So-
do like the guy in what was it, New Zealand or Australia? He got hit with the egg and just punched the kid.
Yeah, no, there's a thing called escalation of force. And what it really boils down to, if somebody throws a milkshake at you and you deck them, okay, that's perfectly fine. But if somebody throws a milkshake at you and you pull a pistol and shoot them, that's not a proper escalation of force, not in any way, shape, or form. Not only that, but when you engage in those acts of physical violence like that and you push them to excess, then not only are you exactly as bad as the far left wants to paint you as, but you're using their exact same tactics. That doesn't make you better. That makes you the same as they are.
But still, there's that one old dusty book that has the passage that says an eye for an eye. So,
Oh yeah, no, definitely. But eye for an eye is still a proper escalation of force.
oh no, I get you.
I mean, if somebody hits you in the stomach and hit them in the stomach back, I mean, that's okay. That's eye for an eye. You've done exactly the same. But that same book doesn't say, hey, take their head off for poking you in the eye.
Well, now, so the YouTube's invariably bleeds over into Twitter.
It does very
have you-
much so. We've seen that all day with Peanut and Sparky.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to bring them on an IRS. Not tonight, guys. Not tonight, because I'm pretty sure there's not going to be a cadet available. I'm just using my
I'm pretty sure
observational.
she's indisposed.
Yeah, I'm using my observational powers. But so have you ever been suspended or booted from their twatters?
I have gotten a 12-hour suspension, actually. It is the only one I've gotten. It was probably the most amusing goddamn suspension I've seen in a long time. I said, I want to argue about dumb shit. Tom Penoid, where are you at, you nappy-headed white trash wigger?
Okay.
Now, for anybody who knows Tom P., that was nothing but accurate statements.
All right, he can have nappy hair. Yeah.
Nappy-haired, white trash, wigger. I mean, that's all completely true. But I don't know if it was their algorithms that got me, or if somebody reported me. I don't know, but that got me a 12-hour suspension.
Yeah, I got booted until I erased one.
And they make you take it off too. They make you cut the tweet out. So it's like, oh, it's not there anymore. We've done our part to remove this offensive material. Bunch of bitches.
Now, so when you get on to a stream, do you ever have that in the back of your head? Like, I have to be careful with what I say, because there is, as how evolution goes, there has to be a degrade before there can be improvement. And there's a lot of channels getting struck down for people saying what they feel.
That depends. I am often more worried about the people I am streaming with than I am about YouTube's algorithmic nonsense. So, for instance, there's certain things I probably would not say on your stream, Doc. I'm not going to pretend that I'm a KKK member, for instance, and scream out how much I hate the darkies. That's not going to happen. Because I respect your stream. I don't want to get taken down. But on some other streams, or on my own channel, I'll go into that rant and not have a problem. It's my channel. But then there are people who I know that there are certain things I just should not talk about because it's going to cause an issue. There are certain things that maybe I should not say because I know it's going to cause a problem. And that's just the normal censorship anybody has when they're talking to different people.
Yeah, it's and I know it's kind of a fine line to walk sometimes, because I know that you debate with people.
Sometimes. Sometimes it's just me trolling. Other times it's an actual debate. I mean, depends on the person, I guess.
Okay, well, let me ask this. Have you ever gotten hooked by a troll?
Oh yeah, no, I've bit down on that bait a bunch of times. It happens. I'm not ashamed to say it. Usually, if someone can point out to me this is a troll, I'll do anything from retracting my statement to being like, "Well, I'm a fucking moron." I think I've done that on Twitter at least once in the past month. In fact, there was something that happened, I think, either today or yesterday, where I found an image on Twitter that was illustrating the problem that is in the LGBT community of them hating bisexual people. And somebody was like, "Well, this image is just a troll image from 4chan." I was like, "Okay, well, that's probably true. It could be, but the problem still exists because that is an actual problem in their community. So,
yeah,
it just depends on the level of troll."
Yeah, I can say I've been around that community, and they treat bisexuals like shit or get off the pot.
Yep.
Know you're gay.
You're riding the fence and you're hurting the rest of us.
And that's just a matter of forced politics going on. People trying to push them one way or the other. Now, does it excite you or depress you more as far as let's call it the moral swing? Because there was a time when it was a complete and definitive line that you could see between, and I won't say left and right, but I'll say liberals and conservatives.
Well, I'm not entirely tracking. Like, what do you mean by moral swing? Like, there's no longer really a line between them, and they're using the exact same tactics and advocating the exact same shit, just on different sides?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that bothers the fuck out of me.
Yeah, because there was polarization. Now, not so much.
No, one of the things I argue with the people I talk to the most about frequently is that we can't use the same tactics they do. We constantly refer to ourselves as better than the far left or better than this group or better than that group. And, to a large extent we are. But if we start advocating the same tactics, for instance, killing a guy because he threw a milkshake, that doesn't make us better. That makes us worse. That makes us exactly like them. And there needs to be a definitive line. There needs to be something in between where we can look at it and go, here's the point where if we step across this, we are no longer better. In fact, we are the same. And because we know that they are wrong and that they are, I'm not going to say evil, but at the very least morally ambiguous.
Or bankrupt.
Because we know that they are this kind of thing, if we step over the line and become as they are, then we are worse because we know that we are worse. Yeah, it does bother me. It bothers me pretty bad. Especially because I know that I'm a human being and I have a violent nature if I'm not careful. So I know I could easily give into the same level of hypocrisy. So it's a constant thing where, yeah, I do watch out for it. I do try to pay attention to it, especially myself.
So now, do we get into, or do we address the show?
You mean the proper villains fiasco, the incident?
We can.
It's not off limits. The whole thing was public, as far as I know.
Okay.
I'll try not to get into too much side taking. Essentially, I was approached by Antoine back when this whole thing went down. This is a number of months ago. Don't ask me for exact timing because God knows I have no idea. I was approached by Antoine because he'd seen me on a couple of streams and apparently liked my style. He liked the characters I created. He liked the things I could produce. And he said, "Hey, do you want to try out for this show I want to start? I want to do a reboot of a show. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think you'll have a great time." And I was like, "Yeah, you know what? My first real opportunity on YouTube. That sounds like a cool idea. Well, let's go for it." And so I went and I tried out, and obviously I got the part. What I did not know is that the show that was being spoken about, The Proper Villains, was actually going to be a not just a reboot, but a restarting of a show that supposedly been put on hiatus or canceled or something along those lines. And then things got real blurry because Antoine may or may not have fired people before or after I was hired.
Okay.
I say it like that because I'm still not entirely sure what happened. And at this point, I also really don't care. But needless to say, the people who used to be his co-hosts, Zell and Lo-Fi, were extremely upset because they hadn't really been told that they were getting fired, that the show was getting restarted, or anything like that whatsoever. Now, there's more layers to it than that, but that would get a little too deeply into their own personal stuff, and I'm not here to talk about that.
This is about you.
There was a lot of hubbub that happened. I ended up getting forced to pick a side, which I really don't like. I much prefer having the opportunity to see all the information I can before choosing. And instead I got forced. I ended up, of course, siding with Antoine because I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I shouldn't have to cater to somebody else's whims just to be able to have fun. Eventually, we ended up changing the name of the show from Proper Villains to Army of Snarkness so as to avoid more further unpleasantness. There was an apology issued, and the show went on pretty well for a while. Recently, unfortunately, Army of Snarkness was canceled due to just a lot of really bad scheduling. We were just running out of time to get things done for the most part. I'm still really good friends with Lo-Fi, which is really good. I at least don't openly hate Zell these days. I'm not sure how he feels about me. I also could not care less. But yeah, no, there was for a while there, the drama was heavy.
Well, and here's the thing that I definitely like your take on. Are these people, when they get down to it, and I won't say that they're affected by clicks or subs, but yeah, maybe possibly, that these people fall back to the lowest common denominator, which becomes drama. And regardless if it's drama on stream or drama behind the scenes. And I've seen this in a lot of shows where they just basically, eat themselves or the floor just collapses underneath them.
Well, I know for the IBS crowd, that's definitely how that works.
Mm-hmm.
I think for the whole Proper Villains fiasco, I think a lot of that came down to interpersonal relationships. What I did not know when I first got invited onto Proper Villains by Antoine is that basically everybody involved had known each other for a good amount of time. There were lots of little interpersonal webs and entanglements, and I was basically an unsuspecting fly stumbling into a mixed spider's web of roughly 5,000 to 6,000 spiders who were all hungry. And that was kind of how it felt for a bit too, because I had no idea which way to turn. It was a very tangled mess. Like I said, to this day, I still don't fully understand all the different little. It's kind of like when you have a bunch of Eastern Bloc satellite countries, and they've all formed treaties with each other, and no one's entirely sure what would happen if one country attacked another.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of how it felt.
Yeah, but would you not say that YouTube has kind of evolved into playground clicks, though? I mean, if you
definitely,
if you're talking to this person, but this clique doesn't like them, then they'll sideways come at you.
Well, definitely. I mean, just look at Tonkasaw.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Tonka's a prime example. I made fun of Tonka one time, and I've had two different of his fans come after me at different times now. Jacob Navo and Thrax have both come after me because I guess I don't show Tonka the proper respect. I don't fucking know.
Well, at least Thrax thinks I'm lazy and senile and no threat, so I'm okay with that.
Thrax and Jacob Navo both think that me and Antoine control the internet. I don't know what the fuck that's all about. I barely control myself half the time, so.
No, yeah, and I mean, it seems to me a lazy way is just creating controversy, just to try to get the clicks, just to try to get the subs. When
it's all about attention. I mean, you
go ahead.
Say again?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. It's all about attention, and we all have to admit to an extent that if you're on YouTube and you're creating content, then you like attention. Not saying that you're a terrible, selfish person or anything like that. Not saying that to you, Doc, or say it to myself. Just if you're on YouTube and you create great content, then you probably enjoy being the center of attention. Some people, however, struggle so hard for relevancy and struggle so hard for recognition in the eyes of their favorites that they do really dumb fucking shit. Jacob Navo's a prime example of, Daddy Tonka wasn't talking to him enough, and so he decided to come after people who had been mean to Daddy Tonka. That wasn't a good option for him. But no, you're right. It's very much these playground, cliques where there's little bullies all set up all over the place, and if you're not with us, then you're against us, and you better toe the line or else,
Yeah,
and then you get guys like Scooby.
Yeah, I mean, I spend a lot of time BTS talking to people behind the scenes, and there are people who are loved and despised, and I don't really care what their affiliations are with me. Maybe it's just because of my age, but if they've never done anything personally wrong to me, I have problems having a problem. Now, have you ever found yourself basically categorized or shelved to the point where when you said something that people came to you and said, "Oh no, you can't say that. You're with us now. That's going to look bad."
Um, not in so many words. There have been a few times where I've gotten some sideways looks from not being adamantly hateful about something, or from being like, "Well, look, I don't think that's the proper response." That's definitely occurred. I don't think anyone's ever said to me, "Well, you can't have that opinion now because you're on our side." Um, Although I think that's probably in large part because A, there's very few people I actually seriously interact with here on the web. And B, because I've also made it pretty clear most of the time that I'll listen to every side of the story before I make my own decision.
Oh yeah, I don't think a conversation with anybody should be put off limits, with one basic exception. If you're spouting something that you are personally against, like I would never have somebody who was a map on any one of my shows ever. I'm not giving any sympathy to anybody who's a pedophile.
Pedos are probably the only person on Twitter who I've ever had zero regrets about reporting, and in fact, the only people I've ever reported are pedos. So, I mean, I definitely feel you on that. There's some kinds of filth that should not be tolerated. But even then, and this is an opinion that's got me in some amount of people looking at me like, oh my, really, seriously? I don't think you should round them all up and kill them. I think they need to be prosecuted the full extent of the law. I think the law needs to be changed to accommodate multiple levels of filth. And I think they need to be dealt with. But I think it needs to be dealt with legally. A lot of people don't particularly appreciate that statement, but
Well,
there it is.
and isn't it weird that you can get liberals and conservatives to agree on something, but in order to make your impact on YouTube, they have to disagree with everything else. It's like I don't know anybody across the board with a sane mind, liberal or conservative, that supports pedophiles. I don't know of a single one. But then when you start talking, especially when you get into religion and politics, they don't have a discussion. They have, a slideshow presentation of why you are wrong instead of more of why they are right.
No, there's definitely a lot of that. I think one of the biggest problems, and I do it myself too, so I'm not by any means saying that I'm perfect. I think one of the biggest problems among YouTube content creators as a whole, especially ones who are political commentators,
Mm-hmm.
is that they present opinions and beliefs as hard fact. It's and like I said, it's something that I think we all do to an extent. Some of them are really bad about it, others less so. But when you present those things as a hard fact, which you're not inviting discourse or conversation, you're inviting debate and argument. Specifically, you're inviting argument because you're instantly challenging people with what is essentially an opinion or a belief.
Are they just too thirsty?
I think for some of them, they are thirsty. I think for others, they just don't know how to properly debate something. I think for people like myself, we're just not fucking thinking.
Well, that's honest enough. And by the way, in about 10 minutes, we're going to go ahead and do the Q&A. So
Sure.
Anybody who's got questions, please feel free. Start loading them up in the chat, and we'll ask them as they come. Now, in your opinion, I know controversy sparks clicks, but is there any way possible? Like, okay, if there's one person that you want to debate that is essentially diametrically opposite from you, I'll ask who that person would be, and what would be your goal or your motivation to speak with him?
Let's see.
And I'm kind of sneaking this in because I'm a Socratic method kind of guy.
So can we, by diametrically opposed, can we just diametrically opposed in one particular belief or overall?
I would say it's easier to find a belief because, opinions are like peanut butter. They're just spread all over the place.
All right, so there's two people then that I would be interested in debating, and one of them I may be doing so soon, actually. The first one's Tyro. Tyro has been lately putting forth his opinion that, again, murder is totally okay when you get a milkshake thrown at you. And that's actually I've been talking with him and Lo-Fi about is setting up something to debate that particular concept and whether or not that's okay. But somebody else I wouldn't mind debating is somebody like Christy Winters. She's a very devout feminist. I think, as far as I can tell, she's a true believer. 100%. I would not mind debating her, but I would want to go into that with some serious research on hand.
I get accused. I get accused of not representing both sides, but I put out invitations to Christy to bring her on to the show because I think she's fascinating. I think there's some shady shit that she's done, but still, by and large, she legitimately stands by everything that she did.
Based solely on her debates, not on her behind the scenes shit, because she has pulled some shady fucking shit behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But based solely on her debates and her intellectual capacity, I guess, she's very good at what she does, and she's somebody to be very interested in, at least for something like that, because I know she's a true believer, and I know she's never going to change her mind. I would just like to be able to get to the point with her where we can both go, okay, let's just agree to disagree and call it quits on a mutual respect.
I will say this: you seem like the type of person, and this is why I enjoy speaking with you behind the scenes, is that you seem to be a brain picker, that you want to know what their motivations are for what they believe, and I find that more fascinating than anything else. Of course, if you're diametrically opposed, you're always going to agree to disagree. I mean, that's something that's part of the charter.
Well, there's a difference, though, between agreeing to disagree and agreeing to disagree with mutual respect, I think. Okay. So there's people I've met on Twitter who I'm just like, agree to disagree. Mostly because I just don't want to fucking talk to you. But there's people who I've met who have been like, I'm just going to have to agree to disagree with you on that. And it's not because I don't want to talk to you. It's because I can tell that we're never going to change anything on this, but I still have nothing but love and respect for you. So, for instance, Pinoid. I don't love and respect Pinoid, but I don't think he's the worst person on earth. And so when I say, when he's talking about, well, you should be allowed to chain your wife to a radiator and shake her. Not that he's ever said anything like that ever. But when he says something like that, and we have a 48-hour debate about it, and then we get on a stream and debate about it some more. And in the end, it's like, hey, we're still going to be cool with each other. We're never going to agree on this. None of us are going to change our minds, but we still walk away. And if I am ever in town, I'll buy you a beer and vice versa.
Yeah, I mean, do you feel that the YouTube community, and I won't say the word toxic, but do you think the YouTube community, especially in our neighborhood, has become overreactive, a little too zealous?
You mean, have we become the left?
Yeah, arguably, yes.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I think a large portion of people are becoming much more, if you're not with us, then you're against us kind of thing. Skepticism, healthy skepticism, let's put it that way, is more and more going out the window in favor of identitarianism, even among the right. Which is, I mean, in a lot of ways, that's a natural human reaction. Mm-hmm. And you're going to gravitate towards people who think the same way you do. You're going to gravitate towards conversations that align with the way you think and the way you speak. That's normal, so it's going to happen.
Well, I mean, but take a look at some of the insular communities, like the skeptics community or the atheist community. I mean, they literally peeled back on themselves and ate each other alive.
Well, that I think a lot of that has to do with constant power struggles and supremacy tactics. I think a lot of those people who want to be in charge and people who want to gatekeep and say, well, if you're not my personal standard of whatever group I'm part of, then you don't need to be here. And that happens anytime a group gets power. They start removing those who don't toe the exact right, proper gatekeeping lines.
And is it, Is it the pollution of basically subs? Basically getting those clicks, getting all of those views that are corrupting them, or do you think they were naturally corrupted before they even started with their YouTube ventures?
Both. And I'll explain that statement.
Okay.
I think it was both. I think first off, you have to have the capacity within you to be, the kind of person who's a giant dick when they have a bunch of subscriptions. When they have a bunch of followers, you have to have that within you, because there are people who don't have that thing. There's not that seed inside that goes, okay, I now have 5,000 people hanging on my every word. It's going to go to my head. There's just some people who aren't built that way. And some people are very definitely built that way. So I think it's definitely a question of both. And I think yes, power can corrupt, and absolute power is kind of neat. But I think a lot of times it comes down to you already have that in you on some level, and then YouTube just kind of brings it out of you.
Well, if you would have been there last night, I would have loved to have heard your opinion. I know we talked about it behind the scenes about people basically hijacking platforms just to flip the middle finger at what's called standard or civilized society.
I think anytime you hijack someone's platform, for instance, like those black rights activist people did to Bernie Sanders, I think anytime you do that, you're reprehensible scum. Especially with what Bernie was trying to offer them, which was, when I'm done, I'll happily give you the platform. Now, I'm not a Bernie Sanders supporter by any means, but he was literally going out of his way to say, you know what, I'll let you talk. Just let me finish what I'm saying, and we'll happily let you get up here. And they went ballistic, and then like a giant fucking pussy, he handed it right over to them. But the point is that's absolutely reprehensible. It's a society in which free speech is completely allowed, and the only people stopping it are you people. So yeah, I'm very much against hijacking platforms, especially just to show off that you're hijacking the platform.
Well, and before we jump into the questions, do you think that YouTube as a platform has been hijacked?
To an extent, yeah. I would definitely say to an extent.
How so?
I don't. Well, I mean, it definitely feels like it's left dominated. Just the algorithm alone is a leftist algorithm. People constantly ratio things that don't follow a leftist party line for the most part. Your recommendations for a new person, your recommendeds are almost always things that are either going to be left ideology oriented or completely and utterly superficial. Whereas it's getting talked about, they don't usually get a whole lot of exposure. You see a lot of guys going, hey, are my notifications not coming out? Is nobody seeing the content I'm producing? It was a big problem for Alex Jones. It is a big problem for Steven Crowder. So no, I think it's very much, I don't think it's totally been hijacked by the left, but I think in a lot of ways it has been.
Now, of course, people always say that societal mores are a pendulum swing. Do you see this happening? Do you see the pendulum swinging back the other way? And if so, what would you say the time frame would be?
Honestly, I think when we'll see a big swing is going to be the next election. If Trump gets back in, I think you'll see that pendulum do something. I have no idea, frankly. Obviously, if somebody who's not Trump gets in, then I think that pendulum is going to swing right back, and you're going to see a lot of things change for the worse. Or keep swinging, I guess is the proper way to put it. But I think you'll see a lot of things change for the worse. But I think this next election is really when you're going to start seeing big changes one way or the other.
Now, this seems like kind of an odd question, but do you think that the whole, one voice, one vote, do you think that really has any effect on current society? Do you think your vote counts, essentially?
To an extent. I do believe it counts as far as it goes to the people of the Electoral College take a look at what the popular vote is, and then it's their job to go, okay, Either we agree with this or we don't. And I think they should have. I personally, they should put out why they don't agree with it. But I definitely should inform the electoral college where the people want their vote to go. So to an extent, yeah, my vote has power. But I think anytime you work in what is, the electoral college style system, then your vote doesn't have nearly as much power as you'd like, because you still have a group of guys who can overturn that any second.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Hey, let's jump into a question here. Ray Stone asks, have you heard of the military sci-fi author Ian Douglas?
I don't think so, but give me a second to look it up and see if I've read anything by him, because I've read a lot of books whose authors I can't remember for shit. Oh, it's William H. Keith, huh?
I do not know.
That's what it says on the interwebs. And he's written. I think he's either written or edited at least one of the Bolo anthologies. So I've probably read some of his work.
Now, well, before I get into the next question, so have you? And I'm going to say this because, as an asshole writer myself, have you finished anything or tried to submit anything yet?
I have finished a few things. I have not tried to submit anything, mostly because I don't particularly think anything I've written is very good read. But I have finished a few things here and there, a couple of short story type deals. Most of what I really am trying to work on right now is mostly novels, so nothing finished as of yet.
Well, novels are great. I mean, I've written like 5 of them, but novels are great. But it's those short stories that give you that burst.
Mm-hmm.
Because a short story sometimes will turn out to be a novel, because you'll write it, you'll finish it, and then you go, wait a minute, I'd really like to delve into this part, and all of a sudden you start fleshing it out. The pages start rolling, and all of a sudden, that stack gets thicker and thicker. It's basically, a novel is kind of taking the training wheels off of a short story. And I'll say that as I open a vanilla cream Sprite.
Oh, that's better than what I thought you were going to open up. Please tell me you've already gotten rid of that awful, awful Faygo you showed me earlier.
I stopped drinking it.
Oh, thank God.
I legit just stopped drinking it, because once Faygo gets warm, it goes flat instantly.
For those of you who don't know, Doc was like, I've got this cotton candy Faygo I'm going to drink, and I almost threw up in my mouth. That just... Cotton candy Faygo just sounds wrong on so many levels.
I thought you were gonna have a pity vomit when you actually saw me on camera.
Oh no, I can handle far worse. But I mean, you're, compared to some of the really horrible people I've had to deal with, Doc, you're a prince among men. Don't worry.
And let's see here. Kadant asks, any stories or ideas you've been working on that you want to share, that you'd like to put out there?
I've actually put a link to at least one of them on Twitter, and Kadant's probably read more of my work than she probably should have, quite frankly. But the ones I really want to get out there, I've got one idea anyway, that is going to be about monster slayers. Another one that's going to be about I've had this particular family in my head for a very long time. That's, so something like a basically dark fantasy, a generational kind of look. So several stories that take place across the family's existence, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Going all John Jakes sci-fi.
Yeah, basically. Very similar to that in a lot of respects. Good call by that one. I would not have said it like that, because he's far better than I'll ever be. But
he's better than Garrison Keillor.
So I've got a few things like that. I have a couple ideas that are not so fleshed out for, and make fun of me if you want, but romance novel type stuff. I'm a sucker for a decent romance novel, I'll be honest. So things like that.
The best writers can write in any genre. And if you train yourself specifically in doing something that you really don't like, Like I love the old Sam Peckinpah stuff. But I couldn't write a Western to save my life. But I'm like, fuck it. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to write a Western.
If we're going to talk about Westerns, then William Johnstone.
Mm.
Oh, man, that man can... I was not a fan of Westerns until I picked up a William H. Johnstone book. I don't remember which one it was at first, but I read the next, I read another 10 or 12 books by him. That man can write a fucking Western. Holy shit. That was good stuff.
Well, now... so have you? I'm sorry, I messed it up because the ones that I normally had read during as a kid was Louis L'Amour and like Zane Grey.
I was about to say, are you going to say Zane Grey next? I read books by them back when I was a kid because I would go to my grandmother's house. She lived out in Maryland, so we do basically a cross country trip to go see our all the relatives and everything. And she has one of those real old Maryland homes that just, it's not actually all that big, but it sprawls and it's got a fully finished basement, so it looks huge.
Mm-hmm.
And down in the basement, now you just have to imagine this basement. So the whole basement's fully furnished. The carpeting is this deep, heavy pile, like a thick shag almost, and it's this sort of like brown that variates between like a dark brown and a tan all over.
Mm-hmm.
The walls are that old school wood paneling.
Wait a minute, is
dark brown shelves.
Wait a minute, is the carpet shag?
Very close to it. I think it's like just a little too short to be shag.
Okay.
Dark brown shelving and everything. So it's very, all the furniture is old and antique and all that. And she had just bookshelves lining the walls, and a large number of them were my dad's books from when he was a kid. So I would pick up Louis L'Amour, I'd pick up Zane Grey, I'd read about, driving horses across the prairie and, cattle drives and everything. And, I was never a huge fan of the Westerns, but when I was stuck in my grandmother's house, I had to read something. I was very much a reader as a kid. I was the kind of incredibly nerdy bastard whose parents would ground him from reading. So.
Yeah, I mean, well, also, I got to give some love out to Larry McMurtry, too.
I never actually read him McMurtry.
They kind of bastardized his Lonesome Dove stuff, but it was pretty good. Now,
I like the Garth Brooks song.
Now, I have to ask, is there one genre that you have no affinity for?
Two of them. Two of them I'm just immediately turned off by.
Okay.
I take it back. Three genres I'm immediately turned off by.
Okay.
Time travel. Specifically time travel involving multiple parallel dimensions and timelines.
Oh, well.
Sorry, that makes my brain hurt.
Well, I'm going to say that you're going to hate it because, and we'll talk about the VO stuff, but you're going to hate it because I've got you pegged to do one of the voices in the panties that Sparky or that Grimm showed, or Sparky showed Grimm.
Okay.
And
I mean, I'll happily read anything you tell me to read if it's voice work. I thoroughly enjoy doing character voices. So, then I hate naval battles. So if it's a book about naval battles, I'm probably not going to be interested at all. Just
now, when you hear the word, when you hear the phrase naval battle, do you think sploosh?
No, I think boredom. I think insane, aching boredom that just makes me beg to get to the next chapter, because pray to God, please, it's not more fucking naval battles. There's only two guys I've ever read who can make naval battles good. One of them, like I said, is David Weber. The other one, his fucking name escapes me right now, but he's written a vast number of books about a family called the Courtneys, who are all through Africa.
Okay.
If I can remember the fucking name. I think one of the books is called As the Falcon Flies. Historical fiction. He could write naval battles that I was like, this is fucking awesome. A lot of them are just too dry, I think, is the big problem. And then the last genre isn't so much a full genre, so much as just certain periods in historical fiction I have no fucking interest in.
Wilbur Smith?
Yeah, that's him, Wilbur Smith. He writes amazing naval battles. he writes amazing books. Let me tell you, if you guys like historical fiction at all, and you like action, you like adventure, romance, comedy, all of it, and you like guys who write really well, Wilbur Smith is phenomenal, and you should give him a shot. He's at least as good as James Clavell, at least as good.
You know, I read the whole Shogun series. Good, not great. It's just like
I only read Gaijin, I think, the one where it's the navigator in Japan. And I thought it was fantastic, but I didn't read any other stuff because I just didn't get a chance to.
Yeah, I'm not convinced with Clavell, but I spent a lot of time reading, and then I spent even more time not reading. And I have to ask this because as a writer, if you read something, do you find yourself only way I can describe it is polluted?
Oh yeah, no, 100%. It's both great and awful. So if I'm trying to write sci-fi stuff, I'll try to read only sci-fi. If I'm trying to write paranormal romance, which I have a huge soft spot for paranormal romance, I'll try to read only paranormal romance books. And I'll try to have as many authors as possible that I'm reading. Because I know very much for myself anyway that I will start writing in their particular style, which is not what I want to do. But if I'm reading 4 or 5 different writing styles, then I'm not as polluted, but my mind's still in that mindset of, okay, paranormal romance, here's the lines it goes along, or here sci-fi, military sci-fi, here's the lines it goes along. So I think it's both good and bad that you get that whole quote unquote polluted thing. But yeah, no, I wholeheartedly understand what you're talking about.
See, I'm so bad at it. I can chameleon because I used to get paid to write content. Like ambiguous content. You don't get a byline, but you get 7 cents a word, right? And I find myself, I read more historical fiction than anything else because it tends to be entertaining but dry as a son of a bitch. And I don't really absorb that style.
If for that kind of thing, I would recommend wholeheartedly then basically any memoir of the 82nd Airborne through World War II.
My brother served as 82nd.
That's cool. That's very cool. If I wasn't convinced that's planes and land, I would have gone airborne. But as far as I'm concerned, planes land. I don't gotta jump out of them. I've been on a lot of planes, and you know what? Every one of them has landed. That's
but yeah, it's the whole thing. Airborne's crazy because they jump out of a perfectly good airplane.
Yeah, but on the other hand, it's the Air Force flying them, so I'm not so sure they're perfectly good.
Well, and I do want to expand this because it's not just about your commentary. We do have a question in the chat that says, do you still do commissions?
I do. I still do drawing. I'm just really bad at it lately. I have a lot of free stuff I want to do for people because I have some good ideas. Just for some reason, I'm having this really, really fucking painful artistic block where I have a perfect idea in my head, and for some reason, I can't get it past my elbow. I know that sounds kind of silly, but just I can't get it onto the paper for some reason. I'm trying to fix that by mostly just doodling. And hopefully soon I'll be able to. But no, I still take commissions. If you are interested in that, then by all means, throw me a DM. If there's a commission involved, then I'll actually sit down and do it. And unlike some artists, I won't give you a half-ass piece. I'll keep working on until I know it's ready. I also try to give people, what's the word? Updates on what I'm doing. So I do usually my art in multiple stages, and so I'll give you, okay, here's this stage, here's this stage. What do you think? If something needs to change, let me know. All that kind of stuff. I do want to address something in the chat real quick. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to ask, do you find, well, what's your preference? Digital art or I had to say IRL art, basically pen to paper
art. I think digital art looks, especially compared to pencil and paper, digital art looks so much better. Digital art looks amazing. It's polished. The electronics and software can take care of a lot of that polishing for you, so it's not as much work in some ways. On the other hand, it's very much a get what you pay for setup.
Yeah.
And I just do not have the money to afford some of the gear for that. I used to have a tablet, a little itty bitty Wacom Bamboo, which only cost me $100, but they stopped selling that as far as I know. Also, you don't draw on the tablet itself when you have one of those. Well, you do, but you don't see the image on the tablet. You see the image on your computer screen where it pops up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little it's very disjointed because you're drawing over here, but the image is popping up a good 1.5 feet away.
Yeah.
So
I completely understand that disconnect.
Yeah, it's really weird. You have to basically teach yourself how to. At least I had to teach myself how to do it, and I was never as good on the computer as I was on pen and paper. One of these days, I'll have $1,200 I can just burn on something, and I'll just buy myself a cheap Cintiq and call it a day, and teach myself how to draw with that, and then I'll be a lot better. But for now, it's all pencil and paper. I do scan it into my laptop, and I use the laptop to do some color correction stuff. But unfortunately, anything I produce just is never as polished as a digital piece.
Now, one thing I would recommend, if you haven't seen this guy yet, he's called the Box Office Artist.
Mm-hmm.
James Reyes.
Never heard of him.
He is basically the walker between worlds. He has to draw it physically, and then he'll scan it in, and he colors it digitally. But if you have not seen the Box Office Artist, I would definitely recommend. I think you get off on it because he does stuff like he'll do a 24-hour stream.
I mean, my pants are off, so.
No, okay, good.
I mean, you said pants off were mandatory, right?
Optional.
Oh,
always optional because
very misheard that.
Because if you're in Antarctica watching this, it might be a bad time for you.
It might be. You're right. I mean, there's only so much shrinkage you can handle. I do want to address something that someone said in the chat real quick.
Go for it.
Victor Rand said it's because the more you read, the less ideas you can take credit for. That's a rather true statement. But on the other hand, there's two things I keep in mind all the time when I'm trying to write something. The first is that every idea you've had, somebody else has already had.
Well, yeah, it's the 7 pillars of conflict. There's nothing else past the 7 pillars.
There's no story that hasn't already been told, no trope that hasn't already been explored in some way. The other part of it, the other thing I try to think of a lot, is that as a writer, even a shitty unpublished one like myself, you have a license to lie, cheat, and steal. The difference between lying, cheating, stealing, and plagiarism is that you can take any idea and change it just a little bit, and now it's your idea. And as long as you write it well, then you should be okay. It's only plagiarism when you start doing shit word for word and whatnot. And that tends to help a lot.
Yeah, and the whole thing about it is, I forget which writer said it, but he mentioned that it was like a car crash, that everybody is essentially seeing the same thing, but their interpretation is what's important, because you have your own point of view, you have your own opinion on it, and that's what makes it unique and not derivative.
Yep. I wish I could say more about that, but he said it very succinctly there.
Okay. Kadun asks, out of all your pieces, what would be the one that you'd risk running into a burning building to save?
Lucky for me, all of my stuff is saved in my laptop, so I just had to grab my laptop and be good. Loophole.
And honestly, I don't know why Victor Rand said Doc no, but... Or, no! Are there any stories or drawings that you have drawn or written on a whim that came out far better than you had anticipated?
And every single thing I draw that I actually like. No, all joking aside, so anything that I've drawn or written on a whim that's come out better. So there's probably one that sticks out in my mind is so to explain it, I hate emojis. I think they're just awful little creatures. And I've been listening to a lot of to creepypastas and stuff like that, and I was like, I want to write a very short little, horror story type thing with emojis in it. But I'm also a huge fan of Warhammer 40K, so I ended up quickly crafting just on a spur of the moment this short little creepypasta like thing about emojis that murdered people to death on the battlefield.
Have you submitted it to anybody?
No, I mean I could show you if you want. I mean,
I see. The thing is, I married somebody who's a professional editor.
mm-hmm. Well, it's literally like less than a page. Like when I say short, I do mean short.
Well, then they would call that a micropasta.
A micropasta.
Yep.
Let me see if I can find the silly thing, and I will send it to you over on Zatwatters, I suppose.
Okay.
If I can remember where I put my story stuff,
because
things I can never remember.
Because it's not having it's not a bad thing having somebody that you're married to being able to go, hey, this is
what,
great,
Doc?
or this is shit. That's definitely a beneficial thing. And by the way,
you dropped out, so I actually heard none of that.
Oh, okay. It's not bad being married to somebody who's a professional editor because they can tell you whether or not it's shit. That's not a bad thing. And while he's loading that up, ladies and gentlemen, please do feel free. If you're not familiar with Antihero, down in the descriptor is his YouTube, the Twitter, and of course something he regularly appears on, Help for the Guildless. All my stuff's down there too, as well as the prescription for additional entertainment. But we're going to be winding down in just a little bit. So if you do have any additional questions, feel free to throw them into the chat. We'll make sure and get them answered before we get off air. Raystone is asking, have you read any J.D. Robb romance novels? Kind of sci-fi detective series?
I have read some of J.D. Robb's sci-fi detective series stuff. I much prefer whatchamacallit, Sherilyn Kenyon, as well as Cressley Cole, and to a slightly lesser extent, Christine Feehan. They do more of the paranormal romance stuff. I'm a little more into the fantasy, modern day fantasy romance than I am the sci-fi romance for the most part. I just think that vampires, werewolves, and demons are a better fit for that.
Victor Rand is asking, is the Lamore guy the one with the prehistoric through modern times series? And didn't Stars make a series out of one of his books?
Possibrew?
I have no idea. I would be honest with you and say the way that Louis L'Amour wrote, that doesn't seem like something he would write.
I mean, I don't really know, to be perfectly honest, so I apologize for not being better than this.
Now, we even with a Google degree, we can't know everything.
I have sent you the link there, Doc. It's my Google Drive link, so by all means, feel free to take a look whenever you get a chance. It's very short. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, technically 7 paragraphs, but because I was trained in an older school, I was told you're supposed to start a new paragraph every time you change dialogue points. So there's a couple that are just like one line because it's just somebody talking. So,
well, I know people who do creepypastas, crappypastas, and micropastas.
Mm-hmm.
So I can hook you up with a few people.
Well, by all means, if you think it's worth it, but don't let me stop you.
Well, and that's the thing too, because sometimes I'll say this because of how old I am. I legitimately could wallpaper an entire room with the rejection notices that I got in the mail.
And you should, because it would be a waste of paper otherwise.
Well, if I needed toilet paper.
That's also good. Do they use the nice soft paper to print the rejections on, or is it still the coarse sandpaper stuff?
Oh no. It's the regular Mando stock.
Well, that's
They
not good for wiping, though. It doesn't really pick anything up.
they have no consideration for your butt because they think you're shit anyway.
They should, though. I mean, they're shafting you out of a good position in the publishing area.
Well, yeah, but still, you have to take it where it comes. Let's see. Kadun is asking, between writing and drawing, what would you say is more your passion? Which one do you feel more inspires you to ignite your soul?
It's a deep question there, but I'm going to go with writing. As much as I do love drawing, I am well aware that I'm never going to be as good as some people. I mean, I can go on virtually any corner of the internet and see that I am never going to be as good as some people. But with the whole writing thing, I know a lot of that boils down to just what are people's tastes. There are a lot of writers who are prolific who I just don't find to be any good. I'm not a fan of Sanderson, for instance. I just don't like his particular writing style. But
John?
people, yeah.
Okay.
But people love him. The Alex Cross books, for instance, they're entertaining, but I mean, I wouldn't consider them to be tour de forces.
Well, and it's like people like Ian Fleming. I thought he was a shit stain. Didn't think he was.
I've read some of the actual James Bond books, and they're just not great.
Yeah, just not good at all. But if you get to, have you ever read any of the Executioner series?
You mean the little itty bitty thin ones that came out years and years ago that you can find at secondhand shops sometimes?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the Executioner, Mac Dolan.
Yep.
What was that? One of them. Oh, there was one. It was I can't remember his name. They made a movie out of it, but the movie was apparently trash. I never got to see it. But he was this white dude who had been trained to be like a super martial artist kind of thing by this little Asian dude.
Oh, the Adventures of Remo Williams.
Yes, those were fucking amazing. I loved all of those shits. I read those like I went through those like candy.
And so, do you think that just like movies, that writing has kind of moved past the absorption thing, and it's one of those where you read it and it's a one and done? Or do you think these guys are actually writing to basically be absorbed, to be reread?
I think that probably depends on the author and the purpose of the book. I know that doesn't really answer your question at all. I think there are still plenty of authors who write for rereadability, or did. So like Terry Pratchett, I would have said, no, he writes to be reread. Terry Pratchett wrote extremely well-created comedy, satire based in a fantasy land called Discworld. If you guys haven't read that and you like satirical comedy, then by all means you should go check that out. Terry Pratchett was a god among men. Unfortunately, he passed a few years back, I believe. But his stuff was written for readability. But there's a lot of people. I think, and I'm trying to piece my thoughts together here, so bear with me.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it boils down to what is the purpose of the book you're writing. If the purpose is to make money or to make an ideological point, which unfortunately is more and more people write for today, then it's a one and done. I think if the purpose of the book you're writing, the purpose of you writing the book is to entertain people and to write a good book and to have fun, then I think you're probably writing for reread.
Well, and there are people like Piers Anthony, amazing world building skills.
Xanth novels.
Oh yeah, even J.R.R. Tolkien, awesome world building skills, boring fucking writer.
Oh yeah. I give nothing but props and credit to the screenwriters for the Lord of the Rings movies, the first three, because they took some of the worst, driest writing of all time and made these amazingly likable, identifiable characters out of it, which I would have thought close to impossible without seriously altering the source material. And then the screenwriters for The Hobbit butchered it horribly, even though The Hobbit was written much more entertainingly.
So, as you're writing, do you visualize it like a movie?
Oh yeah, definitely. Theme songs and everything. 100%. I'll think of a soundtrack for it. I see all the moves in my head and everything. I'm seeing the characters interact as I describe them interacting. I mean, half the problem when I'm trying to write something is that my brain moves faster than my mouth or my hand does. So I'm trying to type out what character A said 14 lines ago. Meanwhile, character B has already walked out angry with him because she didn't like what he said about her father. And I'm like, oh, but I'm trying to get to this point. And then worse is like, okay, the climactic battle. This is going to be such a cool scene, but I have to get there first.
And that takes time.
And that's daunting as hell because I'm sitting there going, okay, I have this great scene that I want to get to, but I need to put in all the other stuff first. And that's just going to take fucking forever. And that, like, my morale goes downhill pretty quick after that.
Goatman in the chat asks, why did you choose your name?
Oh, Antihero? A couple of different reasons. One of the big ones, and probably the biggest one, is that I saw a bunch of people on the right who I mostly agreed with, but didn't fully. And I saw a bunch of people on the left who I mostly disagreed with, but didn't fully. And I said, chances are if I start voicing my opinions like this, no one's really going to like me. I'm not going to be anybody's hero, and I'm not going to be anybody's villain. And I just like the concept of anti-heroes. These guys who are technically good guys, but they do things by their own rule sets. And the rest of the world be damned. They know what they're doing is right, and they're going to do it their way because for whatever reason, the previous system or rule set has failed them.
Yeah, I can't think of the word anti-hero without thinking either Clint Eastwood's The Man with No Name or Snake Plissken.
Mm-hmm. Oh, exactly. Guys like the Punisher, for instance, Deadpool, Venom. After he finally got his own thing going on, these are all anti-heroes, guys who technically were doing the right thing one way or another, but they were doing it very much their own way and for their own set of motivations, had nothing to do with good or honor.
No, and I can appreciate characters like that because they usually have more depth.
They're more real. So like Superman, and I'll harp on Superman a lot, so I'll try not to do it too much. I hate Superman. I can't stand him for a lot of different reasons. But the one I'm going to address here is Superman's hard to identify with. There's a few storylines where they make him a little more human, but for the most part, Superman is he's not a human. It's obviously so. And so it's hard to create depth in someone who is already so far removed from the rest of us. It's hard to identify with that. He has no weaknesses. He can't be beaten. He went to hell, beat the devil, and came back. Like, there's nothing that can really take this guy down for long. Whereas, something like the Punisher, for instance, who's a normal, everyday human, he has no real powers. He gets shot. He has to go on the mend. He's out there, he starts off avenging his fallen family, which is something that anybody can identify with. And then from there, he goes into just this government is a fucked up system that doesn't work, and there's bad people there. And maybe I'm a bad person for killing them the way I do, but fuck it. Someone's going to take care of them.
See, I've always enjoyed the Superman mythos just because of the fact that this is a guy who legitimately is better than everybody else, but the only thing he wants to be is human.
You're going to make me go into this, aren't you? Oh, no.
Uh-huh.
Doc, why? I hate Superman because he thinks he holds us all in contempt. So I have the exact opposite viewpoint than you do. I think Superman holds us all in absolute contempt. So way back, right? When Superman first came out, how did they describe Clark Kent?
How did they describe him? Oh, you mean him mild-mannered?
Mild-mannered. They called him a milquetoast. They like, which in that time period, milquetoast is basically calling him a fag. I mean, they like he was meek. He stayed in the background. He wore his little glasses and he wore his little prissy suits and he kept himself out of the spotlight. Now, so first off, you got to think. So which is the real Superman? Is it Kal-El or is it Clark Kent? Well, obviously it's Kal-El. It's Superman. That's the real being, which means that the other one is the alter ego, and so he chooses this weak, mild-mannered human. Why does he do that? Well, to blend in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what does he think of humanity if he chooses weak, mild-mannered, and gay to blend in?
That he's badass.
I find it extremely contemptuous of him. He's like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna be weak, and that's how I blend in with you guys. Whoa, that's rough. I just don't like Superman at all.
Yeah, but that's truth in advertising, though, because compared to him, yeah, I mean, he can punch a fucking sun and make it go out.
Goku still wins.
No.
Oh, no, they've done studies on this one, man.
No,
there have been hordes of autistic nerds who've looked deeply into this.
No, I've seen it on Screw Attack and a couple of other YouTubes that basically, since Superman has unlimited resources, that he would take Goku out.
Have they factored in Super Saiyan God though?
See, I don't follow Dragon Ball that hard.
Canonically, they introduced Super Saiyan God as well as Mastered Ultra Instinct, and I'm pretty sure the latest results put him well over Supes.
Well,
in most canons, there's a few canons I think where Supes is still pretty much invincible. So
well, and here's the thing: Dragon Ball Z writers suck. They're incredibly shitty because
that's true.
It's all God in the machine. You know, it's like, let's go ahead. He's going to fight somebody who's really, really badass. Okay, well, there's a new level.
Well, that and I mean, the original thing that made the Super Saiyan so very badass was a God in the machine moment too.
Yeah, but
every time they get close to death, they come back even stronger.
Yeah, I mean, I get the Christ analogy that they keep doing with it, but it's like, just stop, because it's a poorly written series. And I don't know how somebody can be entertained by watching 20 episodes of the same fight.
Oh, see, that's why I watched Dragon Ball Z Abridged.
Well, that's a different thing, though.
It's much different. It's much better. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
If you guys in the chat haven't watched Dragon Ball Z Abridged, just go YouTube it and then just sit back for a while. You're going to have a great time.
Well, because they have their tongue firmly implanted into their cheek.
Oh yes, and they don't fucking hide it. It just gets, the first episode's a little rough because the very first one, but it just gets better with every episode. They've got 60 now, which doesn't sound like much. There isn't a couple of those are 3-part episodes. They also have a couple of movies they've done the dubs for. They're good. They're solid.
Nurse Wicked asks, how many times do you put yourself or close friends in your writing?
All the time. Especially if you're somebody who I've role played with or done tabletop gaming with, then your characters will usually end up in my world somehow. If you're somebody who is really close to me in some way, you'll end up in my book somehow. You'll be a character at some point. Generally speaking, anyone who has an impact on my life in a positive fashion has ended up as a character somewhere.
Well, yeah. I have to confirm that as well, because I will have a friend or somebody that I know. I'll assign their speech pattern to a character, and that helps me write it.
Not only that, but for me, it's almost an immortalization thing. So, for instance, one of my absolute best friends, he has a character named Richard Grimm. Who was a vampire, who was a very powerful vampire. And that guy did so much for me, and was like, he literally shed blood for me on several occasions. We were back to back and more times than I really want to think about. And so I've taken his character, I guess. And it's obviously not the same character as his now, because it's been through different experiences as the stories have progressed. But that character is immortalized to an extent, which means he is to an extent immortalized. You know, he's written down somewhere. It's on the internet, and the internet never dies.
Yep.
So for me, a lot of it comes down to, how do we make our friends, the people we care about, how do we make them live forever? Because everyone's trying to cheat death all the time. and you put them into your writing, and then technically speaking, especially in our electronic age, they live forever.
Well, until the nukes drop and the EMP just destroys everything.
Yeah, but then we're all dead anyway.
Yeah, nobody's going to be reading anything upon death.
Yep, that's how that usually works.
And I don't know if this is a good question to end on. Go, man. Another nobody asks, are you sexually attracted to Richard Spencer?
No. In fact, I find him and his haircut to be ridiculous.
I can't say I dislike the haircut, but I don't like the dude.
It's ridiculous on him.
Oh, okay.
I'm not even like. Apparently, he's married and everything. I don't know how that fucking works.
You're saying that since he's so not gay, he's gay?
I suppose. I mean, like, the guy just does not look like an attractive individual. Like, heart, soul, mind, body, all of that. Ugh.
Well, yeah. I can't disagree. Sorry. I just can't. Now we're kind of winding up here. You've been more generous with your time, and I certainly do appreciate it. I do want to make sure that those of you who have not interacted with Antihero, his YouTube, the Twitter, and one of the shows he regularly appears on, Help for the Guildless, is down in the descriptors. He also does occasionally stop by the IRS Insomnia Ramble stream, and we like him for that as well. Also, down there is my stuff. Yep, the Twitter, the Streamlabs, the Patreon, blah 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 blah. And also our prescription for additional entertainment is down there. Those are YouTubers that I like. So let's finish up on this. There are people out there who are, I won't say highly impressionable, but they're having problems with their focus and their direction. As far as, and you can do this as a writer, you can do this as an artist, you can do it as a YouTuber. What would you suggest to them to where they can find their path and travel?
Well, for a second there, I was going to be like, "Oh God, just don't follow my example. It's the best way to be." But I'll give you a real answer.
Okay.
And it's actually the answer I would specifically give to anybody trying to do art. But I'm thinking now that I'm thinking about it, I realize it works for pretty much everybody. Good Lord, I can't fucking talk. The first thing you should do, people, is learn to speak proper English when you're on a stream. That's the first thing you should do.
Yeah, we're almost home.
And not fumble over your lips like you just bought them at a discount Walmart. Anyway, it's the same thing I use for art, and I'm realizing as I'm talking about it that it can be used for virtually all of this stuff. So when I was learning to draw, I knew that I didn't have a style of my own. So what I did is I copied the crap out of my favorite artist until I could draw their stuff perfectly. And then I copied the crap out of somebody else's style to draw it perfectly. And I did that for 3, 4, 5 different art styles. And then I said, what do I like about these styles individually? I like this style's eyes. I like this style's facial features. I like this style, the way they do bodies. I like this, how they do hands. I like the way they do hair. And so I'll take all those bits and pieces and combine them. And so now I have a style that is uniquely my own. It has reminiscent bits from here and here. So if you look at my work, you'll see that there's definitely some heavy anime influence, but there's also some heavy Western comics influence. Specifically Marvel over DC for the most part. But you'll see that because that's how I learned to draw, was by taking all these different influences and then combining them into something that I was comfortable with, that I enjoyed, and that I could draw. And I think the same probably goes for, writing, for YouTube, for all that kind of stuff. If you're looking for a direction that you want to go in, take a look at the top 3 people you really like, and then analyze what do you like about those people. So if your top favorites are DocGriffon, Tyro and Koate, and let's just say randomly Magog. All right. So what do you like about those 3 people? Well, you like the fact that Doc is pretty neutral on just about everything, is able to have a conversation with anybody. Awesome. And what you like about Magog is that he's totally willing to dress up and be crazy and get in front of a camera with it. And what you like about Tyro is his almost obsessive way that he hunts down every single fact. So then you combine those. And so what you end up with is, a character that obsessively hunts down facts, but at the same time is able to have a conversation with different people. And so you end up having a debate channel where you do well-reasoned debates that are heavily reliant on facts and figures. But it's in character.
I'm interested. Who is the artist?
What do you mean?
You were talking about that there was one artist that really turned you on when you started drawing.
Oh, I think when I first started really drawing, it was probably Spider-Man stuff. I was a huge fan of Spider-Man as a kid.
So was it McFarlane stuff?
That I don't know. I would have no idea, frankly.
That was around like issue 300.
Well, I grew up in a family where comics were not really appreciated. So if I was drawing comic stuff, I was usually drawing from whatever I could get my hands on. So.
Okay. I understand that. God, we didn't even get into the VO stuff, but I think.
If you're not ready for bed, I'm still wide awake. So.
Oh yeah, I've had like 3 shots, so I'm not even close to drunk.
Yeah, so if you want to keep going, I got no problem with that.
Okay, so
doesn't bother me.
So, how did you get the urge to do voiceover work?
4 years of drama in high school. 4 years of drama in high school.
What was your favorite role?
I've always loved comedy for the most part.
No, I mean actual role, something that you played on stage.
Prince Charming Cad, actually. Essentially, it was a very modern, probably slightly feminist take on the Cinderella story and fairy tales in general. And I played Prince Charming, who was also Prince Charming Cad, and I was basically a giant asshole. But I got to wear all black. I got to wear a tilted crown on my head. I got to speak in really awful raps, but I got to be an asshole and have my own crew follow me around. That was probably my favorite role I got to play because I was legitimately able to be an asshole. And probably just as much of that as I shocked a lot of my classmates at that point in time, because I usually wore, and I'm gonna out myself as a real weirdo at this point. My usual day-to-day wear at that point in my life was trip pants, some kind of band T-shirt, and usually a flannel shirt over that.
I don't see you as a Hot Topic guy.
Oh no, yeah. Well, back in the day, Hot Topic was decent. Now it's just awful. But I wore a lot of that kind of stuff because I just did not give a fuck half the time, and not like in that cool, badass, whatever, fuck this kind of way. More like edgy, sort of, I don't give a fuck kind of way, because that's
okay.
Was it how I was?
Was it what are you rebelling against, Johnny? What do you got?
Basically, yeah. I was a rebel without a cause. But I for that role, I had to clean up, so I had my fitted suit kind of deal and everything, and I didn't look half bad. But that's probably my favorite role. I had a lot of fun with that one. Got to memorize a lot of fun lines, a lot of insult banter back and forth. I've always been a fan of roles where I get to play the guy who gets to riff off other people. I'm not so great at solo stuff. Solo comedy is just not my bag. But if you give me somebody who can play a really decent straight man, then we got comedy covered.
Well, yeah. I mean, comedy's definitely a give and take. You have to have a setup. Yes,
and like I said, I am perfectly aware of my shortcomings. I am not good at comedy by myself. It's one of my biggest problems doing solo streams. Actually, is that I just don't feel like I'm bringing enough jokes to the table. But if you get me on a stream, say with I know a lot of people don't particularly like Antoine, for instance, but Antoine he's an absolutely perfect straight man for somebody like myself.
Well, yeah,
and
you got to have a
lead. The comedic standard. Say again?
Yeah, you got to have a lead. You got to have somebody be able to open the door in order for you to be able to make your entrance.
And the great thing about Antoine is that he doesn't even know he's opened the door half the time. It's perfect.
Oh my.
Yeah. It's great when the joke is real, when it's not just a timed thing. When he'll make a comment and I could be like, "Aha, gotcha." That's when the jokes get really good. Is then when the chat realizes, okay, this is a real thing. It's not scripted.
Well, so what's your favorite voiceover that you've done so far?
My favorite, like, I guess, because I haven't really done a whole lot of voiceovers per se. I've done a lot of character stuff at this point. Um, I've really only done one official voiceover per se, and that's been the character of Hinowa over on Moonifest Destiny, which is a shrine guardian. But my favorite characters to play are probably the trio from Army of Snarkness. The trio is technically only one creature,
Okay.
but it's a vampire with some very serious personality problems. Namely, he has 3 personalities. One of those particular personalities is named the same as I am. It's Zach, but he's incredibly obnoxious. I'll be perfectly honest about that. But just the way in which he comes across tends to be both innocent and also disturbingly knowing, and so he makes a lot of observations and whatnot that may not necessarily be the observations you expect to hear from him, especially the way he talks. Also, I get to do a lot of jokes with that. So,
See, I kind of flash back to the 3-headed brain twin from Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Yep, that's actually fairly similar to it. So it's a lot of it comes down to changing the way in which not only does the voice sound, but also the way they talk. So Zach, for instance, talks like this a lot. It's a lot of fast talking. It's a lot of constant words. It's a lot of back and forth, and he never really gets his finish because he just goes off into the town. That's Zach. And then there's this middle personality, which is more of a balance range, and that's Drake. And so Drake is a couple octaves lower. Drake tends to talk in a more deliberate fashion, says exactly what he thinks, and he shuts the fuck up. And then you have Shade, and Shade is a much more aggressive individual who says "fuck you" and fucking means it. Because that's Shade, and Shade's the asshole. He's the monster of the two. So you have the innocent, you have the middle ground, and you have the monster. And it's not.
We did lose your. We lost your audio. You might have to reload, people. And while that reloading's going, let's not keep with the miserable silence. Once again, down in the descriptor, we do have Antihero's YouTube, the Twitter, and...
Can anybody hear me?
Oh, you're back.
There we go. Is there anybody out there? No, my internet dropped and died. So what did you hear last?
I don't remember.
That's okay. I ramble a lot. Anyway, probably the trio. They're probably my favorite character to play. At the moment. There are other characters I like to play at some point. I'm always open to do more voice work. I am not in any way, shape, or form a professional voice actor, but I'm always willing to give it a shot.
Oh my God. Pardon me for just a moment.
Take your time, by all means. Knock those shots back.
Outside issues. We got just to throw this out there. We got. I originally got lenses for my Doctor on Call gimmick, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the lenses that they sent were legitimately welder's lenses, so I could not see shit. I couldn't see a damn thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I got the new lenses in today, which were like cheap 99-cent lenses. And we're trying to fit those in. And my wife is the kind of person that if a problem comes along and she can't solve it immediately, she'll use a hammer on it.
Man, your poor dick.
I love her for her tenacity, but still, holy crap.
I mean, that must be really awkward in the bedroom.
No, I let her go to sleep first, and then I just sneak in.
Oh, all right. I'm about to say, because like if she can't solve a hard problem right then, she hits it with a hammer. Whoa. Well, honey, I'm just not feeling like giving you a blowjob tonight. Well, what am I supposed to do with this? I have an option.
Have you ever seen the movie Orgasmo?
I haven't actually. I know
Oh,
my
okay.
video, my movie stuff is seriously lacking. I need to fix that.
It's a foundational movie if you like Parker and Stone movies.
I grew up in a pretty excessively religious household in a lot of ways, so there are a lot of movies and just stuff in general I just do not know about. It's very depressing.
Well, that's one that I would definitely recommend.
All right.
Wait, what the? Okay, I was just reading it. Actually, I now have the goggles on just to see if I can actually read anything,
Oh, can
and
you?
they work. So
Nice. Well
that
done.
that means I need to celebrate with a shot.
Oh, there you go.
Um, I have like 3 pairs of these things now, and that's what I get for buying them for like 99 cents on fucking eBay in China. Now let me ask because I think honestly I always find this important. Currently, let's say within the past 2 weeks to a month, what do you think is the most important issue on YouTube that's not being discussed?
Important on YouTube, like important to YouTube. How, I guess, is the best question.
Sociologically,
That's not being discussed.
yes.
Hmm. Honestly, and it may be discussed. I just don't have the right. I'm not in the right circles to hear it. Earlier, we talked about the weird non-polarization of the parties suddenly occurring,
Mm-hmm.
where everyone's acting just like themselves, like each other. I think that's probably the big one.
Um,
Um,
as
I
far
just
as
don't hear.
because I have honestly not seen anybody call. I've seen a couple people, and they're low tier YouTubers, not in quality, but like in subs and clicks.
Yep, and that's
But
usually where you see the call-outs happen is people who are lower tier.
yeah,
Um,
the bigger guys are just essentially leaving that stuff alone.
yep, and I think a lot of it's because they rely on it to get their points out there. Um, they rely on that mob mentality, that herd mentality, I guess the echo chambers to hammer home what they're saying and to get their clicks and their views. I mean, once you get to a certain point, you become more and more reliant on those things. Um, like one of the things that I would love to be able to have, caffeine or die on Sunday mornings. I would love to have 100, 200 viewers at a time. I think that would be awesome. Um, pardon me. I think that would be cool as all get out. But on the same token, I wonder what would happen to me and co-hosts if we realized that we command 100, 200 people as an audience. If we command, 4 or 5,000 people as an audience, if we routinely got, you know, a million views in a day, like people like PewDiePie do.
Well,
I don't know who we'd be at that point, because at that point we would be dependent on the clicks. We gain that addiction.
well, yeah, and let's even take a look at I don't know, somebody like Drunken Peasants. I mean, once everything started kicking into gear for them, all of a sudden the foundation started crumbling. And I mean, they were doing what they did. I'm not saying that it's blaming the no, the community that they were in for taking them down. They started taking each other down. Um, I I just don't understand how you can get together a panel, if you will, and not vet them out to where you can sit back for like 15, 20 shows and see whether or not there's going to be a deterioration. But do you think that that's an X factor when it comes to once you gain tremendous popularity?
I think that once you gain tremendous popularity, that the generation of your panel is something that some people actually want. because it still brings in the views. And as long as you can spin it so you survive it, you'll be fine. So, I mean, perfect example is Schmeckel.
Okay.
I mean, Schmeckel is an absolutely perfect example of that because for the longest time, he would manipulate his co-hosts left and right against each other. He would willing to use any drama to get clicks out there, and he was upfront about it. He's like, if you tell me about something personal, I'm probably going to use it in a future show.
Oof.
What really killed Schmeckel wasn't doing that. What killed Schmeckel was that the original Cunt Stream channel got hacked. And he went from having a huge number of subscribers to having less than 1,000, I think, because he just started up a brand new channel.
Yeah, that was
it wasn't the drama that killed him. It was the hacking that got him.
Yeah,
So I mean,
how that happened was just total idiocy.
Yep. But that kind of characterizes a lot of things that happened over on that channel.
Well, and Tyra's saying in the chat that finding a way to maintain a consistent panel has been tricky, but really, it's almost difficult to impossible because you have internet friends and you have no idea what their ego's going to be if shit blows up. You know, if you become popular, if you start into the triple digits to being watched. I know we've talked about this off stream, but I have a tremendous fear that I won't be able to interact with the chat if I get a ton of subs. I mean, because I watch.
Oh, no, I wholeheartedly agree. That's something I won't say terrified of because it has the wrong connotations, but oh yeah, that's a worry. Like with AOS, one of the things I was really big on is we need to work with the chat. We need to get the chat involved. What can we do to get the fans more into it? Because I think so I'm not going to name names, but there is a really big YouTuber who is well known in our little circle, who I've talked with a couple people who used to be huge fans of his, and now they're not because he got real big and he stopped doing a lot of fan interaction. He's gotten a little better about it now via Discord, but by and large, I mean, he lost people over that. And that's something I don't want to do. I don't want to lose guys who have been there from the beginning with us because we just got suddenly too big.
Yeah, I mean, Medicare will never see anything that you say to him unless you super chat it. And why do you need to pay for your loyalty?
Yeah, I really wish there was a way to stop that without putting a slowdown on the chat, since there's already a 20 or 30 second delay between what you say and what they hear. But yeah, I mean, like I said, eventually you just get. I think a lot of YouTubers just get addicted to those clicks, man. I think once you hit a certain mark, you stop caring so much about what the fans are actually saying or what you actually want to do, and you start caring about what can I do more and more to get people involved. Specifically, what can I do to get them to click?
Yeah, and if and or when I hit 1,000 subs, I'm still not going to kick in super chats because I'll be honest with you, the way that I run my gimmick, the people that are watching, enjoy it because of the content, not specifically because of me, because they want to hear the people that I'm interviewing, and it can be people that have a worldwide name. It could be people that we just know from the neighborhood.
Well, I mean, I would actually dispute with you on that one particular small part. I think you should put super chats on. And I have a good reason for that. It's not because you want people to pay for shit. It's because some people just want to give you money, and it's easier to use super chat sometimes. It's right there.
I'm still uncomfortable with the Streamlabs thing,
I understand. No, I mean, there's like I'm okay with people giving me money because I'm shameless. That's perfectly fine. If you want to send me cash for stuff, as long as you tell me what to do with it, I'll do what you ask me to do with it. That's one of the things I found that's been really helpful. Actually, is like if I was like, hey, give me money, no one cares. And I'm like, hey, I'd like to. So, for instance, I have these headphones on my head right now. My previous pair broke. So I was streaming. I was like, hey, I could use money for new headphones. These are starting to break down. One headphone's already out. This is the model I'd like to get. What do you guys think? And within 2 more streams, I had enough money to go ahead and do it. Because people were like, okay, there's an actual thing he wants to do. So I mean, I would give, when you get to that point, I'd give Streamlabs another thought, or Streamlabs and Super Chats another thought.
Yeah, that's at least another year away.
People and not everybody's gonna do Super Chats just because they feel like they have to pay for you to see it. A lot of people are gonna do Super Chats just because they want to give you money and it's right there in front of their face.
Well, and we've been candid on this. So, what do you feel about a beggars society, from what they're calling it, being created on YouTube?
Considering I've been in that situation before, I have to be very circumspect about what I say. No, but as much as I hate fucking saying this, I learned some lessons from Pinoy when I did my own fundraiser. So at this point, and I realize that I have my own past history, but at this point, I would say that you should at the very least have a purpose for why you're asking for the money. I don't approve of when people, and I say approve like I'm some sort of fucking authority here, but I don't approve when people are just like, oh, just give me money so I can use it. I'm way less likely to want to be inclined to want to send you money. But if you're like, hey, I have these things that I'm doing, I want to get this rig set up, I want to do this, and then afterwards you're willing to show like, okay, here's the cool new thing I got, So for me, I showed the headphones. I was like, here they are. This is really cool. Thanks, guys. I'll be able to stream even more. So I think if you've got a purpose behind it, then I don't really think it's a beggar community because you're still putting out a service. And people can choose whether or not to do it. You're not obligated to do so in any way, shape, or form. And it's not like you're sitting there. It's not like you're sitting there on the side of the road going alms for the poor.
Well,
they can choose to turn off your stream.
But I do think there's a fine distinction for it too.
Oh, very much so.
I mean, because there are basically internet thoughts out there that are just like, you need to give me money. All the what do you call them? The I've seen somebody's chat fill up with fucking Nightbot. With the, hey, donate here, hey, donate there. And there's less people interacting and more of these robots popping up saying to give them money.
Oh, definitely. And I think anyone who's self-aware, who looks at their chat and sees nothing but Nightbot, should probably turn off Nightbot.
Yeah.
I have Nightbot, but I don't think it works half the time. I'm probably going to be turning it off soon just because I don't think anyone gives a shit. My Streamlabs is in the description whenever I have a stream, so people want to find it, it's right there. And I also have Streamlabs OBS, where I've learned enough about it where I can be like, okay, I'd like to buy this, so I'll turn on the little donations bar.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, I'll point it out and be like, hey, this is what I'm trying to get a hold of. So, like, my next couple of streams are probably going to be trying to get a stand-up mic. Because I want to do some character work that doesn't rely on, that doesn't have to rely on. Blah. Good fucking God. I want to do some character work in which I'll be in costume, and I don't want to have to rely on headphones because that would be very much out of period.
Okay.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I'm gonna hopefully try to work a little bit with Jarl Falstaff, who's doing some barbarian type stuff.
Okay.
So I want to be able to do that. I want to try to make it look at least semi-realistic, which means this big old headset on my head's not going to work.
Well, that's true. I think I saw you on a stream wearing the costume.
Yeah, I've been on there a few times doing it. I mean, it's a fun costume. I enjoy wearing it. It's very comfortable, actually. Like it's actually really goddamn comfortable, Doc. But it looks very silly with the headphones on. Anubis is going to explode if I don't say that I make art. So I make art.
There you go, Jamesy. I hope you're happy.
I just shared that with everybody. I make art. Anubis is very happy with the art I made for him because it was horrifically insulting towards Antoine. And it only cost him $10. He was extremely happy with it. He got his money's worth.
So, this is assuming that the YouTube platform stays solid, which I honestly believe that it will. 5 years down the road, what type of content do you want to be creating?
I've got a couple ideas. Well, so recently AOS was canceled, which means I now have way more time during my week. Um, Not that I was looking for way more time during my week, but there it is. Now I have it. Um, I was thinking of a couple different shows. Where I probably really want to be is with a solid team, wherever that ends up being. Um, Doing character-driven shows, whether it's in costume, or whether it's more like old school radio dramas. I mean, that's up in the air, obviously. But really, what I like to do is be doing some sort of character-driven show. Um, Something with actually even a loose storyline. Would be something I would thoroughly approve of. But we could do news, we can cover social media, we can cover commentary, but something with a loose storyline where it evolves from week to week, where the chat can have a definite interaction. Um, that's something I would really like to be doing. Um, I've got a couple other ideas for shows, but I'm not sure if those will ever pan out. So, but yeah, that's probably where I'd like to be in 5 years if I'm still on YouTube.
So, how are you going to get back on the air then?
Oh, you mean like now that AOS is over?
Yeah.
Well, I still have Caffeinated or Die on Sundays.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as my own stuff, I may end up just having to find people who have time and doing something, with an entirely new group. And there's a few people who probably wouldn't mind getting on the net and trying something. So, uh, other than that, I may just go solo for a while and see how well that goes.
No, I mean you might as well because the internet's paid for, right?
Yep.
So it never hurts to
At
experiment.
the moment, my biggest issue is just the shit internet I've got. It's very bad. It's behaving right now, but it usually goes out anywhere from every 5 to 15 minutes. It drops just over and over, and it's usually not dropping for more than about 30 seconds, but that's enough to lose stream sometimes. So what I'll probably do for a while is just do recorded videos. Now that I'm finally, I think my voice is finally for the most part past this horrific sinus infection I've had. So I'm going to start doing more recordings of a book I was starting to read aloud. Just things like that. I don't think I'll be doing anything truly impactful, but I'll do things that I enjoy, which is probably the more important part.
I was gonna say you could do AMSR, but
I don't really think I have an ASMR voice though. Like that would require you to have like some sort of deep and intense voice where people actually like listening to you. And with a few notable exceptions, nobody likes listening to me.
Well, I don't know. There was one girl who just did a pantyhose channel where she just basically did like 15-20 minute shots of pantyhose rubbing up against each other. So
yeah, but I'm not going to wear pantyhose for anybody.
Well, yeah, you can wear corduroy.
That just sounds awful.
It was
well,
awful
like literally corduroy
popular.
rubbing together sounds awful.
Yeah,
like, the noise itself is bad.
Yeah, corduroy was awful when it was popular, and it should have never been. But yeah, I tell you what, let's go ahead and wrap this up. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with the people before I go into the wrap?
That's about it. I'm just your average, everyday slacker.
Making
feel
your
free
way.
to ask me to do. Yeah, feel free to ask me about art. Feel free to ask me about doing voice work. I am a very cheap whore.
But you do have your dignity.
Well, I mean, not really. I'm a cheap whore.
Somewhere you have your dignity.
Yeah, I probably left with the last cheap whore job.
Yeah, or maybe in a lockbox somewhere.
It's safe wherever it is. It's safe.
Yes,
but no, all my stuff is relatively cheap, and by relatively I mean it's fucking cheap. I try to do good work. Obviously, I'm not going to be as polished as some people who are better prepared for it. But if you need somebody to help you out with something, whether it's vocals or whether it's by vocals, I mean like spoken word, not singing. Good God, don't ask me to sing. Doc's heard it. It was bad. But
you made it.
Yeah, I made it, but that doesn't mean it was good. But yeah, no, I'm always willing to help out with shit like that. I do enjoy drawing. I do enjoy writing. I do enjoy, obviously, talking. Otherwise, you should subscribe to Doc Griffin's channel if you haven't already.
Everybody here probably already has, but I appreciate that. So to go ahead and wrap up, of course, we appreciate you coming out. For the next couple weeks, we've got some IRLs working. I'm not going to go into the whole month of June, but next week we'll be talking with the voice of Core TV, Steve Taylor. And then we'll also be talking with one of my favorite horror authors on the internet and creepypasta writer, Matt Demersky. Two really good guys that I kind of have an outside relationship with. And it's going to be a good time. And alcohol may be involved. We are going back to the normal time of 8 p.m. Eastern Standard. And we will, for those of you who had tuned in for CK Walker, we will make the effort to rebook her for June. But since my June is almost completely filled up, we'll see if she wants to take that last date. But until then, I'd like to thank everybody, especially Antihero, for coming out and making it another great show. And I don't see any issues. I don't see any prescriptions that need to be written, any type of additional diagnoses. So please feel free and join us next week. Until then, the doctor's office is closed. Good evening.